Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. إيلاف قريش إيلافهم رحلة الشتاء والصيف فليعبدوا رب هذا البيت الذي أطعمهم من جوع وآمنهم من خوف. نعرة في أمان الله. Thank you. في أمان الله. اللهم صل على محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to the special virtual seminar on our Muslim women and their voices. Today we continue with our part 3 of our series. This event is organized by Bayam Aman, Message of Peace Inc., one of the oldest Shia organizations in New Jersey. This organization publishes books for both youth and adults and has held various Islamic Day seminars, including Hussein Day since 1978. This event is co-sponsored by Muslims for Peace and Stand with Unity, both based in New Jersey. It is being broadcast via Ahl Bayt Media from the USA and live streamed throughout the world. Thank you for joining us. My name is Shireen Naqvi, and I will be your moderator for this afternoon. Women have always held a large burden of responsibilities, and during these unprecedented times, those responsibilities have only doubled. Sometimes it may seem overwhelming with everything we have to balance. It is during these times that we have to keep our faith the strongest. I'm reminded of a time in my life when I received the best piece of advice. You see, a few years ago, I had traveled to Houston, Texas, to visit my eldest cousin. And during that trip, I discussed with her all my worries and problems. And she looked at me and said, "You don't have any faith in Allah." And to that, I thought, of course I do. Allah is the one who can do anything and everything. She then continued to help me understand that, of course, Allah is the best of planners, and that our Ahl Bayt have taught us to have faith and trust in Allah. It is only He who we can rely on, and after all, it is only He who can help us. If we sit and worry and live in fear, we need to search within ourselves to strengthen our faith and pray for Allah's guidance. For surely the biggest of tests and struggles were given to our Ahl Bayt, and through them we can find guidance. The irony of this story is that this was years ago, and little did I know the problems that the world would face today. However, no matter the gravity of the challenges, this piece of guidance has helped me throughout this journey. I realize that everyone's struggles and wars are different, and many times they seem uncontrollable. But the Quran tells us the love that our Lord has for His creation. He does not wish to see us in pain or agony, and has left us with Ahl Bayt as guidance and solace. Today, we have a group of esteemed speakers to discuss how to overcome these powerful challenges we face today. We will also have a Q&A session at the end of this program. You are welcome to post any questions on our live chat or on slido.com. That's SLIDO.com. Without further ado, I'd like to present our first speaker for this afternoon, Sister Latifa Barnett. Sister Latifa is a co-director of Al-Hadi Learning Organization, a full-time faith-based school in Maryland. Latifa earned a bachelor's degree in mathematics and a master's degree in education. She is currently a mathematics professor at Montgomery College. In addition to her own children, Latifa has supported more than 10 families through their homeschooling journey, with 5 of those students currently thriving in college. Latifa has always been inspired towards two endeavors: pursuing reliable Islamic guidance and empowering families to nurture their human potential through lifelong learning, spiritual development, and personal growth. In an effort to promote her love of teaching and learning, she has organized and engaged with several community organizations over the last 2 decades. In 2014, Latifa co-founded the Junior Alliance for Worship, Action and Development, JAWAD, an organization established as a safe space for Muslim youth to engage in activities that promote spiritual growth and community activism. She also began Sister Support Group to create a forum for Muslim women to nurture social bonds and encourage each other towards personal and spiritual growth. In addition to these organizations, Latifa has been a dedicated supporter of multiple religious and educational efforts for the benefits of families in the Shia Muslim community, including most recently Stand for Justice. Speaking on the important topic of social justice, please join me with a loud salawat in welcoming Sister Latifa Burnett. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm honored to share my voice in this wonderful program that you've established over the last 2 programs, and I pray that I can do justice and bring something of benefit, and anything that comes from me that's of benefit is of course from Allah, and please forgive any shortcomings that I may have as we move forward. I begin with the name of Allah, all praise due to Him, most gracious, most merciful, Master of the Day of Judgment, giver and taker of life, He who is responsible for our creation, upbringing, nourishment, and status, the one to whom we all return. And may He bestow His blessings and mercy on our beloved Prophet Muhammad, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, and his pure progeny, and may we always be connected to them. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. O you who believe, be maintainers as witnesses for the sake of God, of justice, and ill feelings for a people should never lead you to be unfair. Be fair, that is nearer to God wariness, and be wary of God. God is well aware of what you do. That is Surah Al-Ma'idah, Surah number 5, verse number 8 of the Holy Quran. So I wanted to begin with those words because it's relevant to the topic. So we're talking about, teaching and learning social justice, or I like to think of creating a culture of social justice within our families and institutions, and kind of my musings about that and ways to do that. So I wanted to begin with just basically talking about what is justice. So I'm going to just give it a very textbook kind of definition, a concept of ethics, right? That means that people behave in a way that is fair, equal, and balanced to everyone, right? Everyone is treated fairly in a balanced way. Okay, this is what we're striving for, and so I want to kind of look at that from the sphere of social justice, right? And so in America, our discussions on social justice tend to be isolated to taking social actions, for example, public protests and demonstrations, or writing letters, or maybe raising money, or, bringing awareness, advocating for people's needs and the needs of humanity. And these are all definitely admirable and acts, and many of them, establish justice or help justice. But if we only isolate our discussions of justice to social or public actions, we actually do ourselves a disservice, because in our faith, personal justice and social justice are like intertwined. They're locked hand in hand, and you can't have the one without the other. And Nahjul Balagha, Imam Ali alayhi salam, he says to us, no one can establish the rule of Allah, the glorified, except he who shows no relenting in the matter of right, who does not behave like wrongdoers, and who does not run after objects of greed. And I wanted to quote this because even if we are advocates of social justice, even if we march and we give money and we work hard to establish the rights of others, if we're not being just ourselves in our personal lives, there's no way that we are actually establishing social justice. That would be a bankrupt social justice. So the key to teaching and learning about social justice is actually going to be personal justice. And what do I mean by personal justice? Well, Allah tells us in the Quran that the biggest injustice that we can do to ourselves is to commit sin. So when we talk about social justice, we can't think of it from the framework of making people do right, or forcing our government to do the right things, or forcing some group to treat another group equally, because we can't enforce justice on anyone, on others. We can only attempt to establish justice in our own personal interactions on a day-to-day basis by acting justly in everything that we do. And so the most meaningful ways that we're going to do that and establish this justice in our households with our families is going to be to go into ourselves in order to purify into ourselves in order to bring or establish justice outside of ourselves. And these are really, really difficult things to do. But because of that, and because I'm just a flawed human being, I'm going to talk about the way that our Imam Ali alayhi salam modeled some of these things, or different ways that he showed how to establish justice and live justly. And then I will bring it back to like our day-to-day lives and how these things, how we can kind of bring those things into our families. So one thing about Imam Ali alayhi salam, we know that he was known as the most noble person. As a Khalifa, after the death of the Prophet, he was the model of moral fortitude, of good character, of kindness and compassion. He was known to, during the life of the Prophet, be a champion of justice. He lived to safeguard the principles of Islam and to take care of humanity. And it was his goal to establish justice for all people, and at all times, regardless of social status or class, regardless of whether we're at peace or we're at war. And he was known to be just as fair to his enemies as he was to his friends. Okay, so that's one thing. He was even so much that he always showed people how to behave rather than telling people how to behave. So even when his rights were taken from him, he showed people the way to behave. Instead of, he would have been well within his rights to do something differently, but he chose to show, and then that caused people to end up having to turn to him for leadership. Another thing about Imam Ali alayhi salam that he teaches us is how to give rights to others, right? He said, Allah, the glorified, has sent down a guiding book wherein he has explained virtue and vice. You should adopt the course of virtue whereby you have guidance, and keep aloof from the direction of vice so that you remain on the way, right? So he's telling us, follow the rules of Allah. If you want to establish justice and give people justice, you have to, be intimate with the Quran, know the Quran, read the Quran, and learn how to recognize virtue and stay away from vice, because the Quran gives us this criteria to judge between right and wrong. And if we know that criteria and we know the Quran, then we have like what do you call it? Like a filter or a sieve where we can filter out the truth, and we actually know that those things we're standing for or we're fighting for in social justice are actually the right things, or actually just things to do. And I bring this up because sometimes when you're out and about in the social justice activism, it's sometimes you might run into some ethical entanglements, or sometimes you might run into groups of people and you're not sure, even though we are both standing for the right, we both are out, both these groups are out here trying to fight for the rights of people. Maybe there are some ethical issues that may be in conflict with Islam, and sometimes we're not sure how to behave. Should we just, because we're all fighting for something that's right, should we just stand together, or should we choose to be apart from them? And how we navigate these things, and what inspires us, or what guides us in navigating these issues is indeed the Quran and the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. That these things, and what inspires us, or what guides us. Something just went with my sound. Is the Quran. Can everyone hear me? Okay. So I will. Another thing, of course, in establishing justice, is Imam Ali alayhi salam always made sure that he advocated for the people who were the most oppressed, the poor and the orphans and the prisoners. He gave clothing. He only himself wore very, very, very threadbare and shabby clothing, and he held himself apart in that struggle, so that he would never forget the struggling of the people. And that was his role as a leader. I'm not saying that we should all be doing that, but it is very important to be mindful of the plight of people who are less fortunate, and not from a very academic or standoff way where you can say, oh, that person is poor, so I need to give them food, but in a way like Imam Ali alayhi salam instructed his governor to be with people and find out what their needs are and provide those needs, rather than coming into a space and deciding what people need and then giving them what you think they need. And upholding justice with the law. Imam Ali always instructed his tax collectors or his representatives to be just in the application of the law. And that is, if someone owes taxes, for example, but in paying taxes will not be able to cover his needs, then the collector shouldn't collect the taxes, because that would be unjust to the person. Even if they owe the tax, it would be unjust to take it. And the last final lesson that I have from Imam Ali alayhi salam is that you have to be just even against yourself, right? We have to be just even if the justice is against ourselves. And I know that Imam Ali alayhi salam there are several stories that talked about how he carried out justice against himself. There was a man who stole his armor, and he ended up paying for it to come back, things like this. And again, these are very abstract, sometimes seeming very far away from us, because Imam Ali alayhi salam was, of course, ma'asum, and we're not. But the mindset is this kind of purifying of oneself on a spiritual level, and purifying of one's family, or you can't make anyone purify themselves, but leading one's family or one's classroom or wherever one's office institution in a way that is spiritually pure, or at least seeking that. It calls the justice from the hearts of those who are with you. And that's why when there was this polarization around this character of Imam Ali alayhi salam, because the people who had justice and goodness, who were striving for that, loved that in him. And then the people who had other than justice in their hearts hated him, right? And so back to practical things. What can we do? What do we do as Muslim mothers, as leaders of institutions, as different people who are interacting in a variety of different environments? How can we kind of teach this, or bring these things to bear? So the first thing I would say is in all of your interactions with everyone, try to go above and beyond in fulfilling your obligations to one another. Those are the things that, the rights that your parents have over you, the rights that your children have over you, just being kind to the people you interact with, being compassionate. So that is, oh, I left something out. That is one very, very important thing, but I need to back up for just one moment. For parents and families, one thing that people try to do is we try to teach our children by telling them. And the thing about education, and I could go into a whole diatribe about this, but the thing about learning is that it's mainly a social interaction. And that is why sometimes you can find that you can go into a chaotic classroom and you could be like, there's absolutely no way that learning is taking place in this place because there's chaos. Many times my household is that way. But what happens is that learning is a social interaction, and children learn more things in that interaction than they do from being told, right? So when you want to teach justice, you want to teach any kind of qualities, it's going to be better done but through stories, through your actions and interactions, through your demonstrations, because it doesn't really matter how much you tell a child that they should treat everyone kindly. If you're not treating everyone kindly, the child's not going to treat everyone kindly, right? So this leads to now being just to others, making sure we're fulfilling all of our obligations, whether they're to the people who are near to us or people who are far, people within our community, people outside of our community, making our spaces welcoming and supportive of oppressed people, be they refugees, poor, orphan, prisoners. We should be making our institutions spaces that are welcoming and supporting and advocate for policies that uplift oppressed people. We should establish programs that feed people, that house people, and that clothe people. This is community-wide. This can start in our masajid and in our schools. We can all do that. We need to be humane and merciful when enjoining good and forbidding evil. And so when we know clearly what's right and wrong, but sometimes in human interactions, we can be unkind in trying to establish those delineations. But to actually be just, we have to be kind, even if that means like there's someone in the community who wants to advocate for justice one way, and then you want to advocate for justice in another way. We have to be able to be nuanced enough and humble enough to make room for maybe doing things differently. And finally, we should be just with our wealth. And we should be just with distributing wealth fairly. We should be more cognizant of what is necessary for purifying our wealth and what on top of or besides our homes and zakat, what we actually owe people who are less fortunate than us. And I think when you put this all together, where you're consciously everyday living and making choices based on the Quran, living ethically, being just to yourself, avoiding sin, and you put that together with establishing these fulfilling these obligations, being kind, establishing services in our institutions, then we will be teaching social justice by living social justice. And that's it. Salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Jazakallah. Thank you so much for that profound speech, Sister Latifa. I love that you mentioned that we need to start social justice within ourselves. Many of us forget that the true fighters of social justice were Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. And may we continue their message. It brings me great pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Sister Zakira Shairoz Jafar Dhalla. She is from Toronto, Canada. She holds a bachelor's degree in psychology and sociology and a master's degree in education. She has studied in Homs, studying in the Women's Seminary, Jamia al-Zahra. She lectures at Islamic mosques, university, churches, and interfaith gatherings. Also recites majalises in Urdu, English, and Gujarati. She is published freelance writer, playwright, motivational speaker, and anti-racist educational counselor by profession. She conducts workshops on race and cultural sensitivity and often appears on TV program panels and radio talk shows to speak on race relations. She has also served as the World Federation liaison for the North America for Women's Needs Assessment Initiative and has lobbied successfully for the constitutional amendment to grant women the right to cast their own vote in elections at their mosque congregation and run for any position on the mosque executive committee. She also is the recipient of the Islamic Center of North America Woman of Wonder Award, as well as the Woman of Inspiration Award by the Toronto Radio Pro Learning Program. She was awarded in Mumbai, India with the Ocean of Inspiration Award, and she has published a plethora of articles and interviews during her tenure as featured reporter for Toronto's Joffrey News. She has written for textbooks, magazines, and publications. Inshallah, she will pursue her PhD degree and working on writing a book in the near future. Please join me in welcoming Zakira Shairoz Jafar Bhala with a loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and jazakallah khair for that very kind introduction. Alhamdulillah, it truly is an honor to be with such distinguished company. MashaAllah, amazing, inspirational women today that we're going to be hearing from, and we've already heard from Sister Latifa. Very inspiring indeed. And I feel so honored and so grateful to be able to share today on a topic that I think it resonates with all of us right now. And I will be, inshallah, sharing a PowerPoint. So if the host can just allow me to be able to do that. And if possible, if you can highlight my video, because I don't see myself as let me do this. All right, there I am. Alhamdulillah. All right, so Jazakallah khair, everyone. I do want to also acknowledge all the lovely people on YouTube who have joined us from Reunion Island, from Lucknow, from the Shrine of Imam Rida alayhi salam. Subhanallah, someone saying that they're right there right now, as well as people from Milton Keynes, from Toronto, and from all over the world, India, who are with us right now. Thank you so much for making the time when you have such an amazing variety of lectures that you could tune into. And this also is being recorded, so do share the link with others. And if you have friends right now also who could tune in, do let them know. I do want to thank the organizers for making this happen. It's not easy to put an event like this together and to have such amazing speakers throughout the year. And we need to support them, and we need to make them really feel congratulated for making this happen. So wonderful to see such educated and inspirational people in our community who have so much to offer. So today I want to talk about a topic which might sound like a downer, and I'm sorry about that. I've entitled it Pandemic, Feeling Alone in a Crowded World. It's a downer, and yet it's a very important topic. Hopefully it won't make us feel depressed, but it is important to be aware of the fact that we have a tendency right now to feel down, and that's expected. We're all going through a very unusual, extraordinary circumstance, and it's a shared experience. We're all going through this. It's a lot like having that elephant in the room, and if we ignore it, we're not doing justice to ourselves. So I want to talk about this. It's a very important topic right now. Absolutely. Here we are going through this COVID-19 pandemic, going through the social distancing, the isolation, forced isolation. We're all in house arrest right now. And even when we're near people, we can't approach them. Even our loved ones, we're about to hug them. And then we're like, they're not in my social bubble. They're, I'm finding we don't even make eye contact anymore with people, even saying hi. Something we used to do, especially in North America, we say hello to everyone at the grocery store, even on the road when you're jogging or walking. And now it's like people are averting eyes because even saying hello, you kind of feel guilty that maybe you're getting too close or you're encroaching on people's personal space, which was already there. Now it's gotten to 6 feet and beyond. Now we're not even making eye contact. So we're in this weird era of lockdown, something that was a very scary word. It was used when there was some kind of awful attack going on. Now we're all under lockdown. And so we're living in an unusual circumstance indeed. We need to recognize each other's pain. We need to recognize that everyone is struggling. They might look like they're really having a great time, but everyone's using some sort of coping mechanism because all of us are under stress. All of us, even those who are introverts, even those who love being at home, even those who have no friends, God forbid. But we say, oh, it's easy for you. No, it's not easy for anyone because even the introvert is now having to deal with people at home, is having to deal with people in their space. Studies show that a lot of divorces happen when husbands retire. When women, they enjoy that sanctuary and now their husband is at home. Someone they love, inshallah. But having that person in your face all the time, it's like, this was my space. This was my sanctuary. I could, be ready to deal with people for 3-4 hours in the evening. But now everyone's home all the time. So even for people who loved being home, home is no longer that place where they can sort of gather their thoughts and reflect and get their act together before others come in. See, Irving Goffman was a thinker, sociologist, who talked about how the presentation of self in everyday life. We all have this persona that we show to the world. Our home is a place where we hang out and we let go. Now we don't even get to give out a persona out there. We're not even getting a place to show this other side of us. We're always off at home and warts and all, and we're in pajamas all the time. I find some people say to me, at least you get to dress up because you're coming on TV. Others, we have no reason to get ready anymore. It feels ridiculous to get dressed up. For people who are not going to notice, who are not going to appreciate, and who are like, where are you going? There's nowhere to go. So there's a lot of stuff we're going through right now. And it's important for us to recognize each other's pain, recognize each other's, God forbid, increasing mental illness, depression, God forbid. Also, it's important. Why is this topic important? We know we're going through this. Why do we need to talk about it? Because, we're misunderstanding each other. We are actually assuming that only we're going through this pain and others are okay because they look like they're having fun. And others are not saying anything. So they're fine. And then there's also this thing about how we need to figure out how to recognize stuff. And we need to also learn how to reach out. People who are laughing too loud, who look like they're really too happy, actually are the ones we need to look a little bit closer at, because it's not normal to be so happy when we're all really fed up. It's been over a year now that we're going through this, because March was that official lockdown, but a lot of us started to take notice in January. A lot of us were noticing in December because we were on top of the news. So a lot of people have already started feeling depressed. And when you're depressed, what happens? You isolate yourself. And we're already being forced to isolate. And then it's harder to connect to close friends and family. So many deaths going on right now. On top of that, a lot of suicides. There are. And we need to take notice, because just because we are believers, just because we're very, very spiritual people, doesn't mean that we too do not feel attacked by this virus that is attacking our emotions, our souls, our everything. A good friend shared something very interesting in Urdu, couplet kind of thing. Hamari khokli hasi par mat jao. Hamari khokli hasi mat suno. Don't go on this hollow laughter that you hear from me. Hamare chehre ki hasi par mat jao. And look at the smile on our face, this laughter. Hamari ruh ki baat suno. Listen to my soul. Hamari ruh se rubaru raho. Stay connected to me. How hard it is to be connected to people when you're living with them. It's really hard. Looks easy. Oh, now we're finally home. Now we can do all that stuff. You know how we were avoiding our loved ones? We were saying, well, I don't have time. Now we have all this time and we're still avoiding each other. Now that family that barely got together for dinner is closing the bedroom door. Or people are together and yet they're still doing this. And it's so hurtful. It's really hurtful, but we're all doing it because this is our escape. As soon as someone starts to say something that we don't like, we just pick up our phone and we start looking. And now, think of those people whose lives were really based on likes. There's nothing to post. Maybe some food pictures. Those whose lives are based on buying designer purses. Where are you going to carry that purse to now? This is not a judgment. This is about trying to understand those people closest to us whose lives were based on being famous on Insta. Right? They, even if they wanted to tweet something, when you turn on the TV, it's just COVID news. Newspaper is this thin because all it is about COVID. World affairs were not really happening. It's just starting to pick up a little. Even then, even if regular stuff's happening in the world, people are getting upset. They're like, how could you do this when there's a pandemic going on? We don't really care about other news. So it's like people who were focused on having their designer purses and having their designer clothes and having a picture out there have nothing to post. There are no awesome destinations to be at and say, wow, feeling blessed. I am in Hawaii. No, I am in my kitchen. I'm in my bedroom, in my pajamas. It's not easy for some people. And we're all on social media. So all of us are struggling. There's nothing to report. The other day, my husband asked me, what did you have for breakfast? So I looked at him and I was like, why do you care what I eat for breakfast? Then I realized he was trying to make conversation because what else have I done but had breakfast? But see how easy it is to say, excuse me, are you saying I eat too much? No, I was just making conversation, honey. But now we're all like we're all so sensitive because people who are sad are really sensitive. You can't say anything to them. You can't even say, how was your day? Because they're like, I had a lousy day. So now you're asking me, right? So now we're all on each other's case. It is so sad. And this PowerPoint that I made was actually just so that we could get some of this stuff, so we can understand a lot of this stuff that we're going through. Pandemic, feeling alone in a crowded world. Look at this crowded world, all these buildings, but they're quiet right now. There's nobody on the streets. And we're supposed to be in this big world, but we're all alone. It's really, just the whole thought of this is depressing. And you know what? So many movies are being made already. So many articles. I just saw this incredible article yesterday. And it was about how, it was in the newspaper. It was about how how people are doing studies already. daydreaming is affected by what you see around you. We thought daydreaming is, when you're really in another world, but no, our daydreams are affected, our dreams are affected, our creativity is affected by where we are. Why do you think writers, they go off to this, beach place and they sit with their not typewriters, with their laptops or whatever. And some people like to still type on a typewriter, that old feeling. But yeah, because they go to a place because it helps you think. They're finding out that our daydreams are being affected now because people daydreamed on the subway. They used to daydream when they were out there doing amazing things. Now people are just dreaming lousy things too, and they're getting writer's block too. You thought it was this time to write a book? Right now it's kind of hard to write a book because all you're talking about and talking to are people who are getting on your nerves. So why is this important? I want to talk about a little bit I'm trying to cover a big topic, but I want to sort of whet your appetite. We want to talk about the effects of loneliness and self-isolation, the signs and symptoms of depression, and how to help ourselves and others. And we're going to be touching on this topic with Muslim Voices is going to be actually doing a session on this in the future, inshallah. So here we are, regular people. This is from the Canadian government health website. Should have the reference down there, but I'll put this on in the comment section in our YouTube. So here we are on the left side of the screen, healthy people, normal, mood fluctuations. We go through all this. We laugh, we talk, we sleep. Sometimes we wake up late, we sleep late, this kind of stuff. But then what happens when something stressful happens? That's the yellow column. Start to get irritable when things start to go wrong, right? Start to feel overwhelmed. You start to get a little bit sarcastic, start putting things off, procrastination. Now the sleep's getting affected, something's bothering us. This is when we often say to our spouses and our loved ones, you're not yourself lately. What's going on? Why are you suddenly getting angry? Now we're getting to, the orange zone. Oh my God, they use this for COVID lockdown areas too. The alert level. So now when things are really getting bad, and then look at the red part. Right now, we're pretty much in the red zone. Angry outbursts, aggression, can't fall asleep, depressed. Everyone feels like I don't want to be here. Yeah, some people are saying, astaghfirullah, this sentence, I want to kill myself. We say it very easily, but it's starting, we're hearing this a lot more, aren't we? Panic attacks, people are not themselves. They're not answering their phone. They're not even checking their phone anymore. Every one of us is going through it. I can't tell you how many voice messages I have from people that I haven't listened to, like long voice messages, texts, emails. And it's, this is the pandemic. Okay. The mental health, definitely, it's getting affected. What's happening to us? First of all, COVID is everywhere. We're starting to now not sleep because at first we were staying up all night. It was a lot of fun. There is no school, no work. Now it's becoming insomnia. And then now all these problems and fear scaring us. We're scared of meeting grandma because we're going to make her sick. We're thinking maybe our uncle is going to make us sick. Everyone is a suspect. So here we are. We're eating wrong. Some of us are gaining a lot of weight. And yeah, we're talking about them too. A lot of body shaming going on at our dinner table. Have you seen such and such's video? Have you been on social media and seen how someone's gained so much weight? So here we are. We can't concentrate. And now this illness making us feel helpless. We're getting bored, lonely. We're isolated, anxious, etc., etc. Then our phobia about germs. These compulsive disorders are now starting to really, those of us who needed a clean house are doing it again and again and again, because that's what was giving us calmness. But, we're irritating people around us because, hey, we live here. We can't keep our socks here for a moment. Stress from that disorderly atmosphere. Even those who didn't care about a clean house are getting irritated. The feng shui is all over the place. Overstimulation. People are making a lot of noise. And then we're trying to work from home. The digital screen, the blue screens are not allowing us to sleep. And then these dysfunctional people who are related to us, our own genes, right? They have the same genes. So if we were irritable people, our relatives are also like that. So then our relationships that were already dysfunctional. And so what's happening to the young people? I say this to a lot of people. I'm so glad I'm not a kid right now or a teenager, because I would have missed my friends. I would have missed their whole lives are about going to the mall and socializing and going out to do stuff. They're also really scared about not knowing stuff. They're like, I'm behind, because not everyone can do online learning, especially if your parents are not there to help you go through it. There is no physical outlet, nowhere to run around. They're missing amazing moments. 16, sweet 16, their engagement. They wanted to have that amazing wedding, destination wedding. People are angry, confused. They are not able to laugh anymore. So what's happening here? This is exacerbating what we were already going through. Some of us were unemployed, searching for a job, a new wedding, divorce, God forbid. Family life was already a pain in the neck. Now it's getting worse. All these stressors, right? So what's happening here is already if we had problems with friends and all, it's getting worse. And then there's some of us who already had SAD. The weather was getting on our case as it is, right? We have something called seasonal affect disorder. So it was, already this. And so I'm going to go quickly because I know I'm running out of time. So what's happening is depression, or what it does, it drains your energy. And just thinking about how you should fix things is exhausting in itself. So here we are saying, I really should be doing this, could be doing this. And it's just, but men, they deal with it differently. Some of them just look really angry. So here we have these people who are really getting on our nerves, right? They're anxious, they're restless. Actually, these are all signs of depression, being unable to, looking for words, not sleeping through the night. Some people who sleep too much, they're depressed, just don't know how to cope. So men, and these are studies, this is how they get affected. Fatigue and digestive problems. For women, it's different. It shows itself as something different. So think of the ladies in your lives who are just getting more irritable. You're like, you were so nice before. Pains and aches, this becomes also psychosomatic. And then what happens to children? They're acting out. Who shouts? Who screams? Who throws things? People who feel unheard. People who feel like nobody cares. We need to reach out to people and say stuff like, you're not alone. I'm here for you. I know, it's not easy. Hug that kid, take them in your arms and say, I can't imagine how awful it would be not to have a birthday party. Like, it would be awful. Remember, we used to have amazing birthdays. We're going to have them again. We'll make up for this. Please tell me what I can do right now, right? I know it's hard, but this will change. You can say this to your spouse too. I know I'm just not easy to live with right now. Just give me time. You're important to me. Your life is important to me. Just hold on for one more day, one more minute. And keep reaching out to people who are not picking up the phone. And don't say stuff like, you're imagining this. Are you kidding? No one's after you. Don't say stuff like, well, everyone's going through this. That's dismissive. Make that person feel like, yeah, it's really hard for you. Like, it's really hard. Oh my God. Really? Although you're feeling the same stuff. Telling people to look on the bright side, or, saying stuff like, you of all people, you're feeling this, makes them feel worse. You should be feeling better by now. I did everything for you. So red flags to watch out for, and just give me a few more seconds, inshallah. When they're saying stuff like, I hate myself, like I want to, just throw myself off a cliff, astaghfirullah. Some people who are saying goodbye, some people are suddenly calm. They're like, you were really depressed. What happened to you? Right? Like, how are you okay? So, and also be careful about mislabeling. Not everyone has post-traumatic. We're saying this stuff so easily. Oh, you're bipolar. Just because someone had a mood swing, you can't diagnose people like that. Oh, you're just because someone's like jumping off, jumping up and down doesn't mean they have ADHD. Or, oh, you heard something, you're schizo, astaghfirullah. Or, you're scared so much all the time. Oh, you have paranoia. No. And last but not least, and this also a friend's post. How do I get rid of this? It's going to write on my screen. So here's somebody who says, yeah, mental health challenges, but can we please stop pretending that our former world, with its long working hours and stressful commutes and its hectic crowds and its infinite choice and mass consumerism, air pollution, was a mental health utopia? Listen, it wasn't so wonderful before. Let's not fool ourselves. Let's enjoy this, inshallah. Let's make the most of this this situation. Alhamdulillah, the vaccine is here. Yeah, that's going to poke and hurt too. That's another thing that causes anxiety. Watching everyone getting that poke is ouch. Some people don't like needles. Who likes needles? Nobody does. So we're all in this together. And you know what? Inshallah, we're going to get through this together. For those who are also worrying, is this the end of the world? Because with all the pandemic, on top of that, all sorts of natural disasters, all the signs are coming together. It's the end of the world. Does this mean Imam Zamana Ajalallahu Ta'ala Farajahum Sharif is coming? Is the Messiah coming? Everyone's worrying. Well, you know what? He is. Sooner or later, they will come. So let's not freak ourselves out. Let's get prepared. And if this is, God forbid, a death sentence, or we're all going to die, then you know what? Thank you, Allah, for giving us some warning, because it's not sudden. We're seeing so many people die. Allah is giving us an opportunity to say to our loved ones, I love you. You don't have to be alone. I'm here with you. In fact, we're together. Let's go for a walk. Walks are not haram right now in the social world. We can still go for a walk. And the weather is improving in a lot of parts of the world. So alhamdulillah, it's going to be great. We're going to be great. And as we hear about all the other speakers are going to be talking about parenting and stuff like that, alhamdulillah, Allah has given us this opportunity to make our lives better. So I'm looking forward to hearing from all these amazing ladies who are going to tell us how to parent and how to, inshallah, make our lives a better place, make the world a better place. And let's smile. Studies show people who smile start to feel happier. You know why? Because the brain says, why are we smiling? We're not happy. When the smile is on the face, the brain says, let's catch up. And so all the systems work together and say, let's start being happy because this person's smiling. So yeah, happiness starts with the smile, and then the rest of the heart and the body and the soul catches up. Imam Ali alayhi salam has said, if you cannot even be calm and not have this anger, pretend to be calm. So there's something about that. Pretending to be calm, pretending to be happy, not in a, really like in a terrible way, but, just like saying, I'll get through this. We're not talking about the clinically depressed. It helps. So inshallah, keep smiling, make others, and let's make an effort to get others out of their rut, even if we can't get ourselves out. Let's look at each other and say, that person in the family doesn't look so happy. Let's do something for them. And let's, as a family, make our favorite meal together. Let's go out for a walk. Let's plan for what we're going to do when the world opens up. Let's plan our destination, the next vacation that we're going to have. And inshallah, it's going to be okay. We're going to get through this. And subhanallah, this month of Rajab and Shaban and Mahi Ramadan are amazing months of happy moments. So that's something to look forward to as well. Thank you so much for your time. With that, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Over to you.
Jazakallah. Thank you so much, Zakir Shahroz Jafar Dahala, for that speech. That was exactly what we all needed. Alhamdulillah. Mental health is a topic that we don't discuss enough. We need to recognize the signs when our loved ones are suffering. Our Shia community is a very social community, and this change has truly been earth-shattering for many of us. I love that you discussed the importance of reaching out to our community members because it is during these times that we don't realize the pain and struggles that others are going through. Thank you for that wonderful speech. I now would like to introduce our next speaker for this afternoon, Sister Fahima Muhammad. Sister Fahima graduated with a business management degree and works in a law firm as a conveyancer. She later became qualified life coach and certified neurolinguistics programming practitioner. She also certified in mindfulness, existential positive psychology, group and facilitation for companies and institutes, relationship and couples counseling. She recently discussed the challenges of finding a partner during lockdown on many mainstream media outlets, such as the Metro Lifestyle, the Herald, Yorkshire Live UK, BBC Asian Network, Press Association, BBC News, and more. As a trained professional, she has acquired skills, techniques, and tools to empower others to believe in themselves and understand that they are able to accomplish anything that they set their mind to. Please join me with a loud salawat to welcome Sister Fahima Muhammad. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala
Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for allowing the space and the platform for me to speak tonight. I want to also thank the organizers and the team for allowing this to happen. It takes a lot of work behind the scenes. And it's a wonderful platform with beautiful Muslim women and their voices. And it's really important that we have the space to share what is it that is in our minds and our thoughts. As the sister has already mentioned, the many things that I have done, a lot of the things that come up today again and again is relationships. A lot of people think of relationships just in a romantic setting, but it is not that. We are all in relationships. And the most important relationship is what we have with ourselves. And of course, our family members. That's what we are raised with. That's what we grow up with. That's what is in our surroundings from the time that we are born, for most of us. And we have to recognize that we are definitely inspired by the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam with regards to raising children. Today, I would like to talk about raising and building relationships with children inspired by the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. It is really important that we also know that I'm not here as a scholar, but I do a lot of research. And at the same time, I'm not here to give you points that you can Google yourself. I want to have a thought-provoking discussion so that we can have some sort of awareness. I really do discuss social issues, current social issues, weekly on live TV. And a lot of it comes up with regards to today's social issues, which is problematic. Things that are raised, they are extreme and they're not for everyone. But the thing is, because it's happening in our Muslim community, it is really important for us to have these kinds of conversation. I'm not one to shy away or to sit on the fence. I'm here to discuss things that are real and what's happening in our society today. And like I said, I am generalizing. It is not everybody. I see, as much as in my profession, I deal with a lot of challenges and people come to me, asking for guidance and assistance. I also see the other side of things, which is amazing families and relationships as well, which we do not highlight enough. So they do exist. So please, even in these times, do remember that we do have amazing role models in our homes that are still practicing today, that are managing amazing sort of like children, even though they have, families, which we don't have to today in this day and age, that are separated, divorced, single moms, children that are apart from their father, their mother, through the death of their father or mother. So we need to consider this and we don't talk about it. I want to be real and, sort of bring about situations that are taboo. We talk about raising children and building relationships with our children. And obviously we know the best of role models is the Ahlul Bayt for that. And why is that? For me personally, what I see the Ahlul Bayt to be strong is so much. But the most important thing that comes to mind is the love that they had for each other. The actual family bond, that unity, that nucleus family, which we are unfortunately losing in today's society and day and age for many reasons, which unfortunately I cannot get into with the sort of time frame that we have today. But I have raised this before. And I'm going to sort of share with you some of the actual issues that are happening today. We have a lot of single parenting. We do have a lot of psychologist studies that show there is a bit of a disadvantage. But I don't really want to focus on that because I do know a lot of single parents that are bringing up and raising their children quite healthy. But it is a struggle and it is a challenge. It's a challenge with 2 households, let alone 1. But the only way is it's not your situation that's going to be challenging. It's how we live this life. Now, as Muslims, we know that Islam is a test. It's a continuous test and challenge. We are tested with wealth, with health, with so many things in this life, as we are going through right now, which is literally affecting all of us. Nobody can escape it. Some are even benefiting from it in various ways, but there's a lot that are actually struggling in these times. And when it comes to our family homes, our lifestyle over the last decade or 2 has changed. I'm not saying that women shouldn't work. It is so amazing to find professional women out there. But we need to understand, where is our place when we are parents, and what is the support that children need? Islamically, it is very clear, and even studying today's psychology, it's exactly the same. The first 7 years is the most important. That's when they are modeling you. That's when they are actually gaining all their habits. In psychology, they say, after 7, you've already been programmed. And how are you programmed? Because you're on this sort of frequency, which is, we have a different frequency in us, which is alpha, theta, beta. So when we are 0 to 7, we are in this theta sort of like alpha, sort of frequency, which is kind of half asleep, which is in our subconscious mind being programmed. Whatever we see, whatever we are listening to, the environment, our family around us, the schools that we're put into, that is all what we are learning from. And it's very true what the other people have said so far in the speeches, that we need to model in the right way, because that's how you influence others. It's also in business, but more importantly, it is for our children. They don't really learn by you actually sort of verbalizing it. They learn by watching you. And the first 7 years are so crucial. And yes, we have a lot of Muslim women who are working, and it's the parents' responsibility, both men and husband and wife, to, take part. But we are built differently. And our sort of nurturing as a mother is what is more required. And that safety, security, and that sense of being sort of like, put in a space where you are comfortable is from both mom and dad, but both bring 2 different things to the child. So we need to understand a little bit of the psychology and development of children. And I'm not saying all of you have to go out there and do these courses. We spend a lot of time reading. We go out, when it's time, we, either play football, or we go out with friends, or we, go with our, female friends, or we chat, or whatever it is. We should really take time out to understand, what does it mean to become parents? And it's not there, like even what is listed. Yes, we have to teach them Islamically. We have to educate them. They have a right to a good name, a good home, finance, education. All of those are necessary. But I think sometimes, because we're not developed ourselves, we sometimes want our kids to live through us. What we maybe have sort of like not accomplished even our lives. So we want our children to accomplish that. And that is all good, because most parents want the best for their children. They want them to not make the mistakes that they have made in their past. So it's good to have that. But if you are a developed human, and now a parent, developed or continuously developing in your mindset, you will be able to have the skills to really parent your child in the best way. There are different parenting styles that we recognize in coaching. Disapproving is one of them, where your child's negative emotions is viewed as irrational, trivial, and manipulative, and you think that they're generally bad. And the outcome of that is that the child feels always wrong and, not validated. And they have like sort of lack of emotional control. The other one is dismissing, where the children's negative emotions are viewed as irrational, as well as the child should just get over it. We don't really want to address their issues. We just talk to them as if to say, come on, you're a big boy now, you're a big girl, or at your age, you need to be able to understand. Thing is, even though we have these developmental stages in children, which teaches that they are able to do certain things, children do develop differently, even with their ages that are being set out. So we need to be aware of that and respond accordingly. But if we don't even have this awareness and insight, we cannot parent very well. And we expect even all the children in the household to behave in a particular way. But all the children from the same family, the same values, brought up with the same teachings, will have their own perception of receiving information. And we need to be acute to that. We need to be aware of that. The other one is laissez-faire parenting style, which is where all emotions are okay, we're comfortable, we basically let the children carry on as they are. There's no really parenting assistance. And some people are actually like that. They just ride it out. And, a lot of children have difficulty regulating their own emotions because there's no sort of discipline. And the thing is, the best way of really raising children is becoming an emotional coaching parent, where your children's negative emotions are met with awareness, patience, understanding, respect, viewed as an opportunity to develop intimacy between you and them. And you are sort of guiding them through those emotional storms that they may come up with by listening and showing empathy. And also not just trying to resolve their problems, but assist them resolving it. So you open up their own awareness, because we think that all the time we need to obviously give them the answers, when in fact they actually already have that in them. Yes, it does depend on the different ages and stages that I am generalizing here. But more importantly, the outcome of that is that they will be more comfortable with their own feelings and displaying and being expressive with whatever it is that they're feeling. And they may even have a higher self-esteem and a better, higher aptitude to learning, as well as the ability to form their own friendship groups. So there's many things that you can look up to ensure that if you're not even able to identify what sort of stage your child is at, you have to understand that, there are certain things you can look at, their eating patterns, their friendship groups, their sort of like response to certain things, whether or not they are, sitting by themselves a lot, whether they are interacting, whether they come home skipping, laughing and joking, or some days they're not. And what is the reason? Is it a continuous thing or not? Because we can't always be happy and a high. Kids do find it difficult to maintain themselves and to also understand their own emotions. They are being bombarded a lot today, and even at an early age. And when I said before that I'm not opposing women to go to work, but we need to understand as parents that those early years, they need to be regulated more, where they do have that interaction with you and the influence is yours. If you are going to work and you are sending them to daycare from an early age, remember that's taken away from their influences, which should be your influences to somebody else's. Not to say if you are working and you have to, that you can't give them that quality time. So that's when you can regulate that. If you are both parents working and you've got young children that they have to be in daycare from the age of 3 and they're there from 9 till sometimes 6, 8 o'clock, and I have heard of this, that they are having that sort of input, and they're having all of the teachings and all of the lessons, which is not your own values. So that's why you need to take extra time out. And even if it's 10 minutes a night before bed, and spend time during the weekend, whenever time you get off, to give them those values, which is really core to your home. Otherwise, you lose them. And if you lose them when they're young, it is very difficult. Not to say it can't be done, but when they get to the early teens and teenage years, or when they don't need your support anymore, then you wonder, why is it that we don't have this connection? Why is it that we don't have this kind of bond between us? It's because you didn't build that when they were really young and they needed it at the most. Our Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, yes, it was over 1400 years ago, with many sort of lessons of, showing love and bringing families together and showing that bond, which we don't really have today. And for me, I feel that we can even go to the majalis, we can go to the mosque, and we can cry our tears, and we can feel that, that love and the empathy and the sincerity when we're listening to a lecture. But we need to take those lessons home. to your spouse, and most importantly, to your children. There's no point shouting at them to behave, to listen to the lecture. You need to basically make them understand why they need to listen, because your behavior has to emulate what is it that you believe in. That's what we need to do. We are not really practicing our religion as an everyday life. We are doing it in steps and stages and moments. When it's Ramadan, when it's Haram, when it's going to the mosque, when it's coming back, it's a different story. It shouldn't be like that. Whatever we do, like with each salah that we pray, it should be an sort of extension as to what more we can actually use that salah to help us regulate how we're feeling, and that will filter as to how we are talking and teaching and interacting with our family members. Now, you have to really take this on as a skill. Being a parent, I find today that we're not taking it really serious. It's not about the numbers of children you have or the amount of, boys and girls you have in the family. It's much more. It is really a responsibility, and you will be questioned for it, and we are accountable. Yes, we say when they get to a certain age, they're going to choose their destination. They're going to make these, different choices and decisions, which is absolutely true. But those are going to come out from your teachings, even if they make the wrong ones. Okay, we are really going to make sure that whatever they do, they're going to know what's right and whatever's wrong. I'm just going to quickly look at a question that we have at the moment so that I can actually see what's actually happening with our audience right now. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is we are obviously in very testing times, and we have to understand that, yes, we will basically, I will answer some of these questions at the end of the chat, inshallah. But I want to basically talk about when it comes to raising children in an Islamic home. A lot of the times we brought up with cultures to be harsh with our children, to be forceful, to even instill fear in them. And it's totally wrong to do that. Our religion is protection. Our religion is powerful. Our religion is beneficial. Now, if we taught them that your salah is protection, if we taught them that hijab is protection, if we taught them that, certain things that we do is powerful for you, like reading your surah, reading an ayah before you leave the house, and, maybe even before you take your exams, if you just quickly under your breath or in your mind recite salawat or something, that's going to help maybe help you with your memory. Now, that is what we need to talk about to our children. We need to expose them to religion in a different teaching, not which is haram and halal. The rules are there, the guidelines are clear. But we as parents, when we are teaching that to our children, in order to inspire them to actually take it upon themselves, to be, not reluctant, but actually wanting to take it on, and especially telling them the stories about how, things will benefit them and make them powerful, then that is what's going to inspire them to take it upon themselves. You can only do this as a parent if you feel it and you are practicing it yourself. A lot of parents come to me saying, I have a problematic teenager. Can you please speak to them? And I'm like, can you and I have a conversation first? Because it's really important that we understand that children, even at a teenage years, are still developing, and they need support, and they are only reflecting upon how we have brought them up. And the more influences we can give them, and the better we are developed in order to do that. Because even as adults, as I coach so many adults with challenges that come their way, they're still trying to figure out their identity. They're still trying to figure out how to deal with things. Not to say that they shouldn't at that age, but we're not taught this in education in a secular way, even in the Western world, which I feel is really a shame. So we need to talk about more about self-development, not just when we're adults, but when we are at a young age. Yes, at the beginning, we got to give them that discipline, punctuality, etiquette, manners, akhlaq. All of these things are important. That's, fine. First 7 years. And by the way, I'm only paraphrasing. The first 7 years, there are stages which Imams, Sajjad alayhi salam has, sort of put on us to sort of, have children in three stages, where we give them certain stages in life that they have to be, learning a little at the beginning in the first 7 years, and then the second stage. But they brought in various pyramids, and I'm only going to highlight what I feel is important to listen to right here, right now, which is my own interpretation from also psychological studies. So the first, I would say, which is also in line with our Islamic studies, is that you teach them the basics of, morals, etiquette, respect, manners. Believe me, they do need that from a young age, not in a forceful way, but to understand that you may have anger, you may have emotions, but how you respond to it. For example, if you are in nursery, you may be annoyed at somebody, but you don't hit them or somebody else in response. You have to manage your emotions. You have to respond better. So you teach that from a young age. And what I find from my own clients, that when teenagers and children are coming up to age 8 and above, then they're now understanding life a little bit better and more. But then they're realizing that they can't get what they want. And things don't work out, as even if they've worked hard in an exam and it hasn't worked out for them. And so the next thing to teach them is, this is where challenges appear. And you need to understand that life is not a blueprint. And I find this very difficult to even explain to adults, that we cannot live life just expecting what we want and thinking it's going to happen for us. And if we teach children from a young age that actually you might study a whole year for your exam, and if there's a chance that you didn't make it, you didn't get the results you want, that failure is feedback and it's not the end of the world. And maybe that path is going to make you a little bit stronger. And when you actually come through affliction or disappointment or even failure, it's an opportunity to develop and grow. Instead of, you being so caught up about it, which you will be at the beginning, but to continue with a different frame of mind, then that's going to bring a different human being. Because believe me, if you are teaching them this from a young age, when they go into college, university, or the workplace even, they're going to understand that how to build their own relationships with their colleagues and peers around them, and how to manage that. Now, these things are really vital, because we can give them all the knowledge, which, like I said before, we can Google all of this knowledge. But it's actually transformation is what we need, to use that knowledge so that we are transforming ourselves in our daily lives. And that comes through our habits. Okay. We cannot do this if we don't have that awareness. We cannot do this if we don't have those insights. We cannot do this if we are not practicing it ourselves. Whatever we are as adults will filter to our children, will filter our family values, will filter into our neighbors, our society, our community at large. This is why the household is so important. This is why the family unit is vital to keep close and together and tight, even through adversity. We need to work hard to stay together, because those are the times where you can build better bonds, you can have connections, and children feel safe and secure. There are so many techniques that we have in today's life that I can teach you about raising children, but that would be on a one-to-one coaching session. Unfortunately, we don't have time for that. The other thing I want to quickly touch on is the drama triangle, which is in my relationship and couples certificate sort of, lessons that I always remember. The way in which we actually psychologically interact between people. Now, if you can imagine a triangle, now this is the drama triangle. And on one end, the three ends, is the persecutor, the rescuer, and the victim. Now, if you always imagine that triangle, what role are you playing? And imagine what role is your child playing. Are they always the victim? Are they always the persecutor? Are you always the rescuer? Now, I can go into this a lot deeper, but unfortunately I don't have time for it. But it just opens up your mindset as to how much psychology goes behind relationships, communication. We talk about communication all the time, but people don't understand what that means. A lot of it's non-verbal, actually. A lot of it is thought. A lot of it is mindset. A lot of it is the way in which we receive information. I'm talking to maybe about 10, 15, 20 people right now. Each one of you are listening to me differently. You are taking what I'm saying from your own assumptions, from your own understanding, and you will interpret it back to somebody else totally different. And none of it's right and none of it's wrong. It's just your filters. And that's what we need to understand about children as they're growing up. Just because you think you've got them in a household and you're giving all 3, 4, whatever, how many children you've got, that information, they all should receive it in the same way. No, they do not. They have their own, even if they're twins, born at the same time, the same day. Okay, it doesn't matter. We need to take everyone as an individual, but we do need to gear up ourselves as parents. It's really important that we do that, especially in these times. Yes, we're spending more time at home. We are managing more, but it just goes to show that what we're doing in this pandemic is probably what we were living probably about, I would say, more than 30 years ago, where families were spending more time together, where families were actually interacting, where there was that communication, whether they like it or not, and there was probably more tolerance. But I'm not saying that we should go back in time. It's amazing to have technology development, and it's amazing to have forward thinking in society. And our religion is modern. It can coincide with today's day and age. But we need to keep up with it, not just in technology, but our mindset. That's what my point is. We're not developing and growing as human with our mindset. We're not having a growth mindset. We're not moving with the times. Religion moves with the times. Even if those rules have been set up 1400 years ago, the Western world is still catching up, okay, with certain things. And certain things that you might think is backward, like I said, is there for your protection. If you knew how to understand it and then reiterate it to your children, then you'll be able to believe it yourself, and it won't be so difficult to teach them. It's only difficult to teach children if you're not passionate, and if you're not vocal yourself, and if you're not living it yourself. If you have real passion for what you believe in, and if your values mean something to you, you will be able to translate that and filter that to your children. And they are, looking at you as their first point of call, as the first role model, as the first influencer. Don't worry about social media. That's going to catch them later on, okay? You need to be strong. Don't let them be the drivers. A lot of parents are scared. And I understand in today's society as well, with the outside influences where it's giving more sort of like open hand to children to have maybe their own mindset without imposing religion into it. But if we teach religion, like I said, with different terminology, so that it is something that they want to actually take on them, that even if they were to say to their school members, actually, I am wearing this because I am proud, I'm protecting myself, and I feel really confident that someone's looking at me for my brain. They're going to be assessing me, looking and listening to what I'm saying. So we're not teaching them that. And if we taught them in that way, then our children will feel it, and they themselves will take it to their schools where they're not going to be subjected to abuse or, looked at as extremists, because we are using different language for our religious beliefs that we are not interpreting in the right way. So we need to really gear up. That's what my point is today. When it comes to raising children, we can have all the theories in front of us. We can have all the psychological backings. We can even have the Ahl Bayt alayhi salam. But we need to practice first, believe first, and be passionate. And, have the sacrifice for our children. They are your responsibility, not just for food and education and a right to this, that, and the other. And be careful how you expose them. With even social media, we will love them. We want to show them off, but they have a right to also having a say of certain things. They have a right to be understood and heard. They have a right to also express themselves without feeling fearful of the outcome and the response that you are going to be there giving them. Even if they are doing something wrong, they should know that my mom's going to be so angry with me. My dad's going to go crazy about what I've just done. But you know what? That's the only place I'm going to go to first. Now, can you confidently say that this is how you're raising your children? Not to just make them shine because they can, perform, and read a nasheed or surah or be first in their class for something. They need to feel that in their mindset. You build that mindset from a young age. Don't wait till they're teenagers or even young adults. Do it from a young age. You can expose them. That's just like they're exposed to everything else. So you go on top of that exposure and you make sure that your influence is first. And then you teach them through that way so that you are the one that they can turn to. And you build that bond, and that even if it breaks, even if that connection's not there, even if you're taking on stepchildren from a second marriage or whatever, look, these things happen. We got to be real. Okay, we're not going to have this all, nucleus family that's always there. There's corruption, there's, disruption, there is stress, there is lots of things happening in our homes today. But if you are a strong individual, you can overcome that and you can still raise fantastic, amazing kids with strong mindsets, because they are our future. They are the legacy that you need to worry about building. Not your house, not your bank balance, not your finance in, investment. This is your investment. This is what's going to carry you even to the grave, where they're going to be praying for you if you brought them up in the right way, where their actions are also going to be, from your teachings. Doesn't matter if they go wrong. People make mistakes all the time. Adults do it all the time, but yet we're so harsh on them for making a mistake instead of saying, you don't know it yet. That powerful word, yet. Okay, that will even teach them to be confident that if they do make a mistake, it's fine. Just like when they get on that, bike and they're riding, constantly hurting, falling, they have to take a few more times and practice. That's why when they first, starting to walk, they'll fall down 100 times, but we bring them up. But as soon as they get to an age where you feel that they have to catch up to an educational system, or they have to catch up to with their friends or, relatives or this other aunt's kids compared to yours, then we put the pressure on them and we give them a hard time, and the comparison starts. And you know what? That's when their self-esteem and self-worth deflates. So be very careful of how you treat your children. And are you actually educating them for your own benefit to look good? Or is it really for theirs? Are you helping them choose in their careers when they go to college and university for yourself to sort of say, my child is becoming this because you want to feel proud? Or is it because your child really does want to do this? Because you know them well enough to understand what they're capable of, what they're happy with, what they're good at, because that's what's going to keep them really, really healthy mindset. I have coached, so many professionals, young professionals going into, junior doctors, going into law, who are depressed, who hate their job even before they've started, because they have been coerced and they've been pressured by their family members, because this is the thing that's been set through generations. It is amazing to have those professions if you are good at it, if you like it, if you want it. Don't just follow these cultural norms and this ancestry sort of dealings and generational history if it's not going to benefit them, because do you want them to be happy and secure, not just for their careers, but in their own relationships in the future? Because believe me, it filters. Okay, a lot of abuse happens because it filters. A lot of bullying happens because it filters. A lot of unhappy, fulfilled, general public and individuals, happen because of that you have provided from a young age. We need to give support. We need to give encouragement, not force, and not doing things just to fulfill your own needs that you've lost out because you didn't do when you were younger and your parents didn't do it. So you want to make sure that you put it on your kids. That is not on either. Okay. Yes, we want the best for them, but they also have a right to choose. You can encourage them, you can direct them, and you can support them. That's what it's about. It's not about you. And a lot of kids as well, on the other extreme, they can be majorly spoiled because some parents are not brought up with certain things that they feel that they were deprived of, so that nowadays children are overspoiled because people are making amends to what they didn't have. Any extreme in Islam is not recognized as healthy. So know yourself well, know your identity, know your values and your beliefs, and don't just know it, understand it, and most importantly, practice it daily. Don't just wait for these months to come or these days to come and for certain occasions to come. It needs to be a continuous journey. For me, it's a self-development and growth journey, which is continuous. Okay, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to increase in your knowledge, I think, we're not taking that to the extreme of how we need to not just educate ourselves academically in the secular education. It's about really growing within. That's what's going to get you the success, the fulfillment, and the happiness which again is another topic of even trying to define what that really means. But inshallah, I hope that this has been a bit helpful for you. Like I said, I'm not here to give you some sort of theory. It's about thought-provoking discussion and conversation, just to raise some of the current issues that are going on. And inshallah, this can actually help you. And if you do have any questions, I hope to answer them at the end of the program. And inshallah, you enjoy the rest of the talks about to come. Thank you very much. And we'll end with another salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
wa ali Muhammad. Jazakallah, Sister Fahima, thank you for that profound speech. We never dissect and evaluate our relationship with our children and realize that they are our most important investment. I love that you discussed to not raise our children from fear when teaching about our faith, and show our children our religion is one of love. And first and foremost, always practice first. I'm so glad you're here with us. We have a lot of questions that came in for Sister Fahima, and I'd like to remind our audience that if you have any questions for Sister Fahima or any of our panelists, feel free to submit your questions on our live chat or on Slido.com. With that, I would like to introduce our next speaker, which is Sister Farzana Hijar Karwali. Sister Farzana is a learning disabilities nurse, social worker, and a holistic therapeutic life coach, and a practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming and a cognitive behavioral therapy. She is also the founder of Inspirational Minds, a founder of Friends Alike, a support group for parents and children with disabilities. And Farzana inspires well-being, which is service set up to support people through a range of life issues with the use of holistic therapeutic coaching and personal development training. Her varied professions have given her experiences that are varied from working with children to adults, and from hospital to the community. She strives to bridge the gap between health, social, and emotional care. She finds herself fortunate to have worked as a nurse and social worker while also having experience in mental health. She feels service provisions needs to be less disjointed and more holistic. She is passionate about planning and organizing initiatives and meet the needs of people. She has focused a lot of her work on helping people to develop independence and integrate within the community. She strives to empower individuals to be creative in finding solutions to any problem. With that, please join me with a loud salawat to welcome Sister Farzana Karwali. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum, bismillahir rahmanir rahim. First off, I want to thank the organisers for arranging such an amazing event. I've been really impressed with all the talks so far. I'm really eager to listen to the remaining talks as well. And I'm actually loving the themes that are joining the talks together. So very well done. And I feel so fortunate and honoured to be part of this. Alhamdulillah, thank you. So today my talk's about challenging behaviour in children. However, I think personally this is a conversation that even us as adults can really benefit from. So first I want to talk about the importance of effective communication in challenging behaviour, or behaviour management, as it were. So I want to give you a scenario. Imagine your child is getting ready for school and they're really taking their time, which is something kids do. And I think we've all been there. And you become really impatient and frustrated. And to some point, you end up rushing them and you kind of take their control. You rush them to the speed that you want them to get ready at, not their speed. So you've taken total control from them. You've taken their freedom from them. You've also taken their choice, all within a period of a few minutes. The child is now feeling out of control. And this makes the child feel very anxious and stressed. This causes the child to resist, and this resistance may happen every day, every morning, and it becomes a routine, and the resistance just keeps increasing until the child starts to become distressed. So from this case study, which relates to many of us, including myself when my kids were young, we can see that the communication that was happening was mainly non-verbal, and it was body language mostly. Was there anything positive within this body language exchange? I don't think so. It all seemed very negative. So let's have a quick look into communication and how it can be adapted. So when we communicate with people, we tend to focus on what we want to get across to the person that we're communicating with. But essentially what we need to be doing is thinking about the person that we are communicating and what their wishes and needs are. We need to also look at whether the communication should be non-verbal as well as verbal. So engaging our body language, and just like the example that I gave before, but also have verbal communication with that. We also need to be looking at whether the person that we are communicating is understanding what we're saying. Obviously, if they speak another language or they've got an impairment or something, they're not going to understand if we just verbally speak in the language that we're used to. So we need to be kind of looking into how they would communicate and how they would take the information that we're delivering to them. We need to be an eye contact. So if it's a child, we need to get down to their level and we need to speak with them so that they can see what we're saying. It's eye contact. We also need to ensure that when we are communicating with them, it needs to be in a way that the person feels respected, they feel valued, and to some extent, they feel that they are also in control of communicating back. So they feel that they have the opportunity to have proper conversation, which is what communication is. We may sometimes need communication aids, particularly if it's somebody that's got a learning disability or somebody that's hearing impaired. We may need to use sign language. We may need to use Makaton. We may need to use visual aids in addition to body language and verbal prompts. So we need to look at the range of communication, and particularly with children, if they're not quite understanding some things, it's very good to maybe draw so that they can see through what you're drawing as well as a form of communication. So in some cases, when communicating with people, we need to communicate slowly and give the other person the opportunity, if it's a child, some time to be able to digest what we've just said and then communicate back. And also we need to be thinking about personal space. For example, if we're in an argument, whether it's with a child or with an adult, we kind of just encroach on the person's personal space. And what happens there is the person that's listening to us actually stops listening because they're more interested in what's happening in that situation as opposed to what's being said to them. So maybe we need to be much more mindful about personal space. We also need to be aware of triggers of behaviors, because sometimes if in the past we've said something to somebody and it's triggered anxiety or a behavior, there's no point repeating that same way of talking. So we need to be very aware of what triggers our child or even an adult that we're maybe having communication with. So let's look at positive reinforcement in a situation where a child is struggling to, I think before that actually, let's look at how we can adapt communication to different settings, yes? So we need to be able to make sure that the child is able to see how we are relating to them. They're able to understand the emotional state that we're in. So we need to be mindful of our own emotional state as well. So positive reinforcement in a situation where a child is starting to, you can see that they're starting to emotionally their emotions are getting heightened. They're starting to feel a sense of overwhelm. So what we need to do is reinforce them positively. And that could be by just saying to them, well done, you've done really well. And kind of give them just a verbal prompt. It could be through giving them a reward. So if you're giving them a reward, say, for example, you've done really well today, you managed to get dressed yourself, I'm going to give you a chocolate in your lunchbox, for example, then at least you've told the child you're giving them a chocolate in the lunchbox, so they look forward to that. But if it's something that's happened in the evening and you don't give them something straight away and you tell them, I'll give it to you later, the effect of that child remembering that you've given them a reward for doing good will be diminished, and they won't actually repeat that positive behavior. One thing that we need to be aware of is that our memories are linked with emotions. It's the emotions that kind of make our memories stick within us. So if we make the child experience a sense of happiness and excitement when they've done something right by giving them a gift or reinforcing them positively, they will remember that, and so they will make sure that they do it again. But if it's something negative, we've seen a lot of the time, if we shout at a child or get really angry, they will realize that actually they're getting attention, even if it's negative attention. And that's why we get into a cycle where the child will continually display something negative, and they feel fine about it, but it affects us as a parent more. So let's try and make the reinforcement positive and give them the reward soon after, so that the feeling of excitement and that memory sticks, and they will then repeat positive behaviors. And like I said, it needs to be given immediately. So I was saying before about triggers. We need to look at situational triggers. We need to understand why our child behaves in a certain way in different situations and different times. So some people may display challenging behavior when there is a change in routine. So we need to be mindful if there's a certain structure that we have of the day, if we're changing that and the child starts to behave in a different way, then maybe we need to be mindful of not changing that structure. If a child, as you know, is moving school or moving home, that's quite disruptive to them. And you may see that they'll be more emotional or may even display behavior. If a child goes to an unknown environment, particularly when there's a lot of people. So, for example, if we're going to mosque and it's a celebration day and there's lots of people there, or even if we're commemorating and, the mosque is full and we're taking the child in, and we notice that there's a sense of overwhelm, it could be that that child is just obviously not exposed to being around so many people. They find that difficult, and maybe we should find somewhere in, aside where there's not too many people for us to sit with the child, just so that they don't feel that sense of overwhelm. We actually get annoyed at the child. Why aren't you behaving? Why are you running around? Why are you becoming so hyper? But we don't actually realize that there's a reason for that. And I will explain that a bit further. So even if sometimes children are going somewhere where they don't know, it can be an overwhelm for them because it's a sense of security that's gone. If they don't know what's happening and they're not in control, they're losing a sense of security. Just like as adults, if something is happening that's out of our control, similar to at the moment with the pandemic, it's very difficult for us to function some of the time. We can get very overwhelmed. So it works the same with children. If a child is taken on holiday or somebody with a learning disability is taken on holiday, the total sense of change of scenery, the change in the people that are around, the language, all of that can actually be of overwhelm. We usually think going on holiday should give us more peace. But at times, if we don't know where we're going, we don't understand, it can actually cause a bit more anxiety for some of us. Going to the doctor or the dentist as well, as we know, can cause anxiety for children and adults. Sometimes even if there's an unexpected visitor that comes home, if you're in a household where you don't normally have just people drop by, then again, a sense of anxiety can set in and you may see some level of behavior as well. If you promised your child something and it didn't work out, you'll end up seeing some level of behavior. So for example, if your child was promised an ice cream and the car broke down and you couldn't take your child for ice cream, that child will cry, they will kick, scream sometimes. Every child reacts in a different way. But that's because they don't have an understanding of why you haven't taken them for ice cream. So, instead of saying, well, why are you behaving like this, blah, 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 it might be better to just sit with the child and actually explain, look, the car's not working. We could walk, but the walk will take this long. What if I made you something today and tomorrow we can get you the ice cream if the car's fixed? And maybe when we're promising things, we just need to be a bit more mindful about how we're promising. because, as you know, we can't always fulfill our promises. So maybe it's just the way we deliver our promise. Even if a child was going to go out and play football at the park or something like that, and it started raining, you know, you may see that the child's kicked off, and it's simply because they're not understanding what's going on there. So let's look at some prevention strategies. Make sure that you yourself as a parent are mentally prepared to sort out any challenges that are happening before you try to step in to sort out a challenge. Because if you're not in the right state of mind, you may start reacting as well. And there's both of you reacting at that time. And if there is any kind of emotional overwhelm, then maybe it's worth for you to switch places with another caregiver to be able to take control of that situation. Allow your child to have something that's of comfort if they're going to a place where they're going to feel overwhelmed. So, for example, like I gave the example of the mosque, going to the mosque where there's lots of people, give them something that's going to make them feel comfortable, even if it's a bit of a blanket or something. And this is similar to some adults. So I've been working with a lot of people that have dementia, and I have seen that some of the women in particular have this habit of folding things. And so when I've gone to do reviews and see, you know, how they are, I'm seeing that they're folding things. Well, I've asked the question many times, why is she folding things? Because she's used to doing the chores in the house. So she'll fold things and she'll do other things. So I said, well, how do you manage that? And they gave her a tissue, or they gave her a handkerchief to be able to fold. And then I watched the woman, she folded and unfolded, folded and unfolded. That was her comfort during a period of anxiety. It engaged her in an activity that helped her to relieve herself of anxiety. Just like we see really young children, they're very attached to their dummy, or they have a comfort blanket. And I even say the same with people that may be going through depression or other mental health issues, or even feeling low. It's handy to have something of comfort that, you know, when you are starting to feel low, you can reach to. And even if that is something as soft as a blanket. And we'll talk about, if we have time, we will talk about different sensory things that can help us at a time when we're feeling emotionally quite charged. So try and keep the same routine, even if you're in a different setting. So like we said, going on holiday, try and keep the same routine. If you go to bed, before the child goes to bed, you read them a book, then do that. Even if it's on holiday, even if it's 2 minutes, just try and stick to some level of routine, because routine and structure makes a child feel secure and safe. So we need to try and keep that wherever we're going. Praise the child, like I said before, and make sure that they feel reassured if there's something that they're worried about, like going on a plane. Don't dismiss the fact that they're scared. You know, oh, it's fine, everyone does it, don't worry about it. I mean, that doesn't help that child. It's more about reassuring the child, explaining to them ahead of time what's happening. Whilst things are happening, explain to them what's happening, and then reassure them as you're in that situation. Another thing that really works is making social stories, or using some social stories that are ready. So what social stories are, it's just where information about different situations or different aspects are put in a story form. So for example, like I said about going on a plane, I know that I have a book from when my children were very young about a child that was going on the plane for the first time, or a child that was having a new baby brother, or going to the dentist for the first time. And in there it detailed all the kind of things that the child might experience. And so the child is aware beforehand. But if you don't have anything like that, you can make your own social story. You can make the child a character within that social story, and the child can help you draw pictures and that. So they're engaged in something to understand that there is going to be change in their life. So let's look at now how to de-escalate, how to manage the situation and kind of de-escalate any behavioral outbursts that you may see. So if you're seeing that the child is triggered, you need to look at different types of de-escalation tactics that work for them. So I'm going to go through a few, but again, through observation of how the child is escalated, you may come to some understanding of how to de-escalate the child. So again, like I said before, we need to ensure that we communicate appropriately using the right communication techniques for that child or the adult, if we're talking to an adult. Make sure that you're non-confrontational. So, for example, if we look at the first story that I put together about, the child taking their time getting ready for school, and you're in a rush and you just take over, in some ways, just, zipping up the coat really fast can actually come across as confrontational. You've got into their personal space, you're hanging over them, and you're talking to them in quite a, rough and fast way. That comes across confrontational. Be empathetic and understand the feelings that they are going through. Look at different negotiating strategies. So, for example, you could say, you know what, if you let me zip up your coat and get you ready for school, we'll have enough time in the car to read a story, or something like that. Or, if you do this for me, I'll do that for you. Try and come to some kind of negotiation. Or, you know what, I'm going to leave you for 2 minutes to try and put your shoes on while I get your lunchbox. By the time I come back, if you haven't put your shoes on, then I'm going to have to help you. So again, it's non-confrontational and you're negotiating. So they feel through the negotiation there's some level of control. Try kind of diverting their attention at times when things are so overwhelming. So for example, you're walking into the mosque and it's full of people. So what you want to do is maybe take a book and kind of show them the picture of the book. We're going to read this book just now. Let's just find a little corner to sit in, and then we'll sit down and read this book. It's diverting their attention into the book as opposed to the amount of people that are there in the room or in the building at that time. Again, like I said before, if you are in a confrontational situation, switch the caregiver to another one. Because what the issue may have been is that whatever it is that you were dealing with, the behavior was according to that issue, but now it's transferred onto you. So the emotion that the child is feeling is transferred onto you. Whatever you say to that child is not going to make any difference. They won't listen to you. Switch the caregiver so that they're able to respond with a fresh outlook to the next caregiver. Pick your battles carefully, because there's no point, trying to clamp down on everything and make that child do everything when they keep resisting. It's not going to work. So pick what things you really need, and then let them do things in their own way on the things that you can allow them to do. Because just taking over can cause a much more heightened response of anxiety and behavioral outburst. And there's no point trying to de-escalate a situation when the child is very heightened. Sometimes what you may need to do is just let the child calm down for a little while. But don't say, I'm leaving you there, you calm down and then I'll come back. Try and explain to the child that, look, I can see you're upset, I can see you're angry. Why don't you just sit down for a little while? Let's take a break. I'm just going to go and wash my face or whatever it is, wash my hands. I'm going to take a glass of water to calm down. I'll bring you something as well. And then leave them. So don't just leave them and walk off, because that would just upset them even more, that now my caregiver has left me. So have a conversation with them and then go back to them. Obviously, make sure that they're safe. If they're kicking out and hitting out, that they're not going to be, their safety is not compromised in any way. And also what you don't want to do is, and if they are obviously kicking out and you need to put them in a safe place, do so. But some of the time what we do is, for example, if we're in an event or we've got a family gathering, which at the moment we're not seeing any of these things, but, if we're in that kind of a situation and the child is really kicking out all the time, and you just don't know how to handle them, I've done this as well, is take the child and we put them in the corner, because we know that they're safe and we know they're out of the way from everyone else. And so they won't be creating a scene in the middle of the room, and they're right, outside in the corner. But when we put them in the corner, we don't actually realize that to some extent we might even set them off even more. And that is what happens. And, in hindsight, thinking back to some of the occasions where I've done it, I can see why my child, kicked out in the corner. Because what you've done is you've taken them out of control completely. You've put them and encaged them in this little corner, which you think is safe. But for them, it's closing in on them. and they feel like they've been cornered in as a matter of speaking. And so we need to really think about where we position that child as well. Obviously, we don't know creating a scene in the center of the room. Maybe walk out for a little while, get some fresh air, rather than just sitting in the room where they're starting to escalate further. You may also want to try and make them forget why they became overwhelmed. So another kind of distraction technique. Make them forget why they became overwhelmed in the first place. A lot of the time we go back to, yeah, well, you did this and that behavior was terrible, and so mummy's angry. And so by saying that, what you're doing is you're kind of bringing it back in, the fact that why they became overwhelmed in the first place. Maybe try and move along and talk about something else and make the conversation positive. So I was saying that if we've got time, which I'm hoping we have a little bit of time, maybe a couple of minutes if I can, just to talk about sensory needs and the fact that a lot of these issues that we experience are because of the senses around us, the issues of behavior. So it's not just communication, it's also sensory input around us. So if a situation, a place that we're in is too loud, it's too busy, like I explained, going to the mosque, for example, or we have people at home, then we may feel overwhelmed. So what really works, and something that you can look up online, is a sensory diet. Building a sensory diet, meaning that you have an understanding of your own sensory needs as an adult or as a child, and look at what senses you need and what senses you're overwhelmed with, and reaching some kind of a balance within you. So, for example, sensory seeking behaviors usually are because you have a sensory deprivation. There's something that's lacking, and there's this feeling that you need to be able to feel balanced. And we see this in children, for example, when they're touching everything. You go somewhere and you tell the child, don't touch everything. And they want to touch this and they want to touch that and they want to touch that. And you're thinking, well, you're going to break something, and you start getting overwhelmed. But actually what's happening there is that child is deprived, sensory deprived. They're wanting to gain knowledge, and there's a deprivation there. And so to fulfill that deprivation, they need to touch things. Some children need to climb. And I wish I knew all of this when I was raising my children when they were young. Now they kind of manage their own sensory needs. But, children will want to climb things, climb everything. Again, that feeling of height feeds into something that's deprived within them. Now, this is not a deprivation because they're lacking or they're not normal or whatever. All of us have some level of deprivation or overwhelm or extra within us in our hormones. Women, for example, going through the menstrual cycle or menopause, there's an imbalance in the hormones, and it has to change through life. And so, it's never going to be perfect. Our vitamins and mineral intake will never be perfect. Sometimes we feel unwell, sometimes we feel good. And so there's a deprivation sometimes of certain vitamins, and sometimes there's more of some. So in any part of life and in our physiology, we always have elements of being deprived of something at a period of time and an overwhelm of something at a period of time. So just so you can understand what sensory deprivation is. Now, when a child is overwhelmed, for example, in a crowded space where there is too many people and they feel out of control, that's a sense of overwhelm. And so there's different kinds of behaviors that you might see displayed at different times because of a deprivation or an overwhelm. And we tend to say, why are you hyperactive? Or, why are you behaving this way? But we have to be mindful of what's going on inside of them, both emotionally and physiologically. And we tend to think that a sensory diet is only for people that have a learning disability, autism, ADHD, or any other disorders, but that's not the case. All of us benefit from understanding what sensory needs feed into us well, and what sensory needs creates a heightened level of anxiety or issues for us. So I think I'm well over time, and I hope that helps. I know there's so much more in terms of sensory diet that people might want to know about. So I'm happy for anyone to contact the facilitators of today's event and make contact with me, because this is a very big area. And actually online, when you search, not so much information is there, but I would urge you to all have a look online and see what you can find. Thank you so much for today, and thank you for listening to me. Wassalam.
Thank you so much for that amazing speech, Sister Farzana. I love that you mentioned evaluating why a child is behaving a certain way and the importance of showing positive reinforcements and celebrate our children for the positive behaviors that they do. I never thought about the importance to explain and prepare our children about new experiences that they are going through. Thank you for such great guidance. I'm so honored to have such talented women in our panelists today. Now we have our last speaker, Sister Farheen Rizvi. As a spacecraft engineer, she helps navigate, guide, and control the spacecraft. She has worked on Cassini, Soil Moisture Active Passive, the SMAP, and NASA ISRO, the Synthetic Aperture Radar. She is starting to work on space-based infrared radar spacecraft. Farheen's love for volunteering fueled her involvement in the community. She helped organize the TEDx Manhattan Beach event involving inspirational speakers. She's worked in the United States Forest Service on collecting water samples for San Gabriel Mountain streams to determine the stream contamination. She also part of the crisis text line counseling service. In her spare time, she tries to visit places of faith like churches, synagogues, and temples to learn about them and share Islam. Farheen believes that preparing for the akhirah is the most important as making a livelihood in this life. With that, I would like us to all give a loud salawat and welcome Sister Farheen Rizvi. Salawat Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you so much for attending my talk. I really want to thank Ahlul Media for giving an opportunity to share my ideas with other amazing women who are doing such unique work in times of importance and definitely the pandemic time. So I really feel honored to be able to share my thoughts on this platform. I want to thank Brother Hassan for facilitating all the conversations leading up to the conference, and Sister Shireen for the introduction. I will be sharing my screen. I have a slideshow. Are you able to look at my screen? Okay, sounds like it's working. I'll be talking about being a Shia Muslim in American society and creating mutual respect by building better understanding and bridges. So just a little bit about my journey first and my background. I'm originally from New Delhi, India, and I immigrated to the United States in 2002. So just about when I was starting high school, so I pretty much escaped the board exams. I was pretty excited about that. I started attending Boulder High School in Colorado, which is in the Midwest of the United States. It was a really good school. They're very focused on math and science, and they had a research seminar class that was offered to people in the senior grade, and I was lucky enough to participate in that. That was probably a very good decision from an early age. I was able to connect with professors at the university nearby who were doing research using Hubble Space Telescope. So they asked me to use Hubble Space Telescope data and model the velocity of galactic clouds, for example. So I was able to interact with really good mentors and work with really interesting instruments from a young age that really fueled my passion to go into science and engineering later. So afterwards, I went to University of Colorado at Boulder. I did my bachelor's and master's in aerospace engineering. This was a lucky time for me because it turned out that CU Boulder, the university that I was near, had a really good aerospace program that NASA targets recruitment from. So I was able to be hired at JPL, which is one of the NASA centers on the West Coast in California, right out of college. I had an opportunity to work on one of their projects while I was at the university. It was a mother-child rover system. So they were able to view my work. The engineers at NASA viewed my work while I was at the university, and they seemed to like it, and then they hired me. So I was at NASA for 6 years. I worked on Cassini spacecraft, which is a spacecraft around planet Saturn. It's in deep space. It was ended in 2017. We crashed the spacecraft into Cassini, so that was a pretty interesting experience. I also worked on 2 Earth missions, SMAP spacecraft, which measures the soil moisture of the entire Earth in about 3 days. You can map the soil moisture. I also worked on NISAR spacecraft, which is a spacecraft that NASA did in collaboration with India. So it should be launching next year. And that measures the ice caps and also soil moisture. It's also another Earth orbiting spacecraft. I moved onwards from NASA to United States government, and my work is very similar still. It still does spacecraft guidance, navigation, and control, but the application is obviously defense systems for United States. And I also created a company called HumanMe, Human Mind Exploration and Expansion, which is a United States federal and California state government recognized nonprofit organizations. I'll probably mention a little bit about that in the examples I'm going to use for my topic. So just remembering my background in New Delhi, India, and just an event I remember from Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam was there was an Imam Barga in New Delhi that I grew up in. It was called Shah-e-Marda Karbala. You can see the pictures of the mosque here. This mosque was established after Imam Hussein alayhi salam's miracle happened at this very location, where someone found a footprint which was believed to be of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So they built Imam Barga around it. They wouldn't allow people who weren't Muslim to come into the Imam Barga at the time. And one day, the caretaker of this mosque, he had a dream, and Imam Hussein alayhi salam appeared in his dream, and he told him that he would welcome anybody, doesn't matter if they're Muslim or not, to come to his Imam Barga. So they allowed people, especially there were a lot of Hindus at the time living in India, so he allowed that. So just first principle of living in a multidimensional society would be, from this event, we can understand that man is either your faith, is either your brother in faith or your equal in humanity. So this was pretty demonstrated to me in front of me with that event. And I try to apply that in my life moving forward. Another interesting aspect I remember from Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, which is when you work with a multidimensional society, how do you connect with them? So you definitely use common grounds to connect with them on. One story that comes to mind is from the life of Prophet Muhammad, may peace be upon him, and his family, when he advised his followers to migrate to Abyssinia at the time from Mecca because they were being persecuted by the people living in Mecca at the time when Muslims were only a few members of society. So we also had a Quran verse that facilitated their migration. It said, those who migrate for the sake of Allah after having been wronged, we will surely settle them in a good place in the world, and the rewards of the hereafter is surely greater had they known, those who are patient and put their trust in their Lord. So they migrated. There were about 80 people in the caravan, and they migrated to Abyssinia, and Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, who was the cousin of Imam Ali alayhi salam, he led the caravan. He talked with the Christian king of Abyssinia by reading verses from Surah Maryam and explaining the nature of Jesus alayhi salam as how we see him in Islam. But the king really found that pleasing, and he saw the commonality in the two faiths, and he allowed them to live peacefully under his reign. one manner of connecting from this story, we find that one manner of connecting with society on common grounds is you can probably choose a line of work which exists in every society and something that's easy to connect on. So my own example is I chose science, math, and engineering. So what I do is I work on spacecraft that pretty much look at Earth as a whole. We're not looking at different nations. We're looking at the entire planet and looking at the universe. So that's something that I can easily connect with any nation or any nationality or any race on. So what I really do is figuring out where is the spacecraft. So that would be navigation as it's going around in its orbit. And then where do you want the spacecraft to go? So that would be guidance. And how do you get the spacecraft there? That's control. So together, this field is called spacecraft guidance, navigation, and control. That's what I really do. And at United States government, the application of this that I can talk about here would be we have spacecraft that scan, for example, the United States, and they look for missile detection. So if you have North Korea that fires a missile our way, we're definitely well protected. There are spacecraft that scan our part of the land and detect for missiles, and then they send that information to another program which can intercept that missile that's coming on. So I work on the spacecraft. I've worked on the spacecraft that detects incoming ballistic missiles. While working on these types of programs, what I really want to stress on is I have an opportunity to serve as a mediator while interacting with different officials. There's people who take orders from Pentagon or even from the White House, and they're always looking to interact with especially youth of how to maybe better their ideas, because you can get pretty complacent when just interacting with people your own age and probably farther away from how society really thinks. And especially people don't want to approach you. If you're in the defense world, they don't really feel like they can really share. If you have somebody who they trust, who can maybe explain to them what happens on the other side of the world, they can probably learn from it. One example I remember is we had a lady come in to give a talk who was the first woman who did a suborbital flight of the Earth, and she was a commercial astronaut. So usually we just have astronauts from NASA, but now they have Virgin Galactic where they send astronauts, just anybody can go into space. But she was the first one who did it from their company to demonstrate that it's safe and they can approach it. So she did 2 orbits of Earth, and she came down, and her perspective was, if we can have different leaders from all nations of the world, and we put them in this one spacecraft and look at Earth from that perspective, the Earth would be a more peaceful place. And I can totally understand why she would say that. Is from that perspective in space, when you look at Earth, you don't see any boundaries, you just see one planet. So when I shared that with the person he was the leader of nuclear warheads, so basically he would give the command to launch a missile on the other side of the world. His ideas were that, we have all these missiles and we have the best military in the world and we can destroy anybody. When I heard those ideas, I felt that this sounds very harsh to me. So I shared the story with him about the lady who went into space, and he really liked that idea and he listened to what I had to say. So I have opportunities like that to act as a mediator with different officials while working on these projects. The other thing I want to highlight is definitely thinking about role models from our faith, especially the Ahlul Bayt al-Islam and obviously Prophet Muhammad, may peace be upon him and his family. So just highlighting some events that he did in his life, which I'm sure everybody knows about, but I would like to highlight them. So he says that his greatest accomplishment was at age 20 when he established a group called League of Justice, which he established had to oversee the people in Arabia when they used to do business. There are a lot of con artists and they would not be fair to people. So he formed this group that would pretty much oversee all the dealings, and he wanted to make sure that they were done justly. So he was very proud of that accomplishment. Something else which I found interesting about Prophet Muhammad, which I had found in one of the books that I read, was that he had facilitated the placement of this black stone into the Kaaba when all the different clans and tribes were fighting amongst themselves. Like, how do you place? Everyone wanted to be the one to take the stone and put it inside the Kaaba because it was a matter of prestige. The Prophet Muhammad's solution was, we're going to take a sheet of a bed sheet, for example, and put the rock on top of it, and then we're going to have each tribe hold the sheet on one of the corners, and then everyone's going to take the sheet and they're going to put it inside the Kaaba. So he was always invited by he was respected very much in society, and he was invited by people to solve their problems in a peaceful way, and his wisdom, they really valued that. I already mentioned this, that people would value him very much. He would be the one where they would place their possessions with, and they would trust him, and they would approach him for all kinds of advice. He was given the titles because of this, the truthful one and the trustworthy. So integrating into any society that's different than ours, it's important to know our own role models and then finding ways of how you can aid the society you're in currently, using the ways of how our role models would act in that situation, and then earn people's trust and respect. And then after you do that, you can explain more about your role models and where your inspiration is, so they can also understand you. So using that approach, I thought of that approach when I created Human Me, this human mind exploration and expansion. So this was the logo which I came up with, and I shared that with the government here, and they approved it, and I talked to them about what projects I wanted to do. So basically doing projects with community building and global peace building, interfaith, exploring yourself, science, math, engineering projects. So I hope to continue using the ideas that I mentioned to further Human Me, and I encourage other people also to be able to connect with societies they're part of and integrate with them more and share more about themselves, and also learn how their ways are. Just finally, importance of creating mutual respect and building bridges. That's very important when we think of our Imam of our time, Mahdi, may Allah hasten his reappearance and increase his lifespan. He has navigated through very challenging times. Obviously, he's been alive for more than 1,400 years. He's probably seen a lot of ups and downs, and he's waiting very patiently to come back to his occultation, for his occultation to end and come back. And we can, the best we can do, at least, is to make his way easier in the society we're in. So maybe making his way for him to come back easier by communicating better with the society we live in. I believe that our Maraje in the world on the other side, they're trying their best to do that. And I've also seen them navigate through very challenging times. So both Sayyid Sistani and Sayyid Ali Khamenei. Sayyid Sistani, for example, in Iraq, he went through, he handled the reign of Saddam Hussein, who had definitely had a lot of cruelty done to Shia people in that side of the world. He navigated through a lot of that. He had to navigate through the Iran-Iraq war, along with Imam Khomeini, and then Ali Khamenei, Sayyid Ali Khamenei after that. In current times, they're dealing with sanctions that are being put on them, and issues with ISIS, and a lot of other judgment that we see put on them from this side of the world, where they don't really know who they are or their values, and they're placed in the category of people who are terrorists, for example. So we can help them because we're here in this society, and we have relationships that we form with even regular people, our friends, and we can talk more about the challenges that they face on the other side of the world. I feel that that's very important in helping the Imam of our time, making his way easier. Just a summary on building respect and building bridges is obviously in the Quran, Allah says, He made you into nations and tribes that you may know each other. So He obviously will support, Allah supports the idea of knowing each other, even if we're different from one another, and explaining and learning about one another. And then seeking opportunities to facilitate a better understanding between different parts of the world. Sometimes you may not think that something is an opportunity, but if you could turn it around to an opportunity. and you can use the resources you have and the position you're in. So if you're in the United States or in London or UK, you can use that as a way to maybe facilitate better conversations. So just an example from my life, an event that happened with me, it was several years ago, I guess 2 or 3 years ago, when I just joined the United States government in the defense sector. I had on Facebook, the FBI was looking through my profile, and because I was a person who had gotten a clearance and I worked on programs of national security, they obviously tried to understand who I was and what I was really doing. So they went on my Facebook and they found these 2 things which they pointed out. One was I had changed my profile picture. I had overlaid it with the Iraqi flag. This was a feature on Facebook which a lot of people were using at the time. I think some people changed it to the flag of France when there was attacks on France. And I changed it to Iraqi flag, I guess, on July 4th, because that's the day that an attack happened on Iraq. And I had this picture of Imam Hussein alayhi salam on Zulgana. For several years, this was my background profile picture. So they came back and they wanted to talk with me about what this picture meant and what the writings meant and who is this person and why did you change your profile picture to Iraqi flag and what does that mean? So I had a big conversation with the FBI about just why I did that. So luckily, I had expressed on Facebook why I was changing my picture. So I had said, as soon as I changed the picture, I'd written, thinking of Iraq and the United States on its Independence Day on July 4th, was targeted by ISIS. They killed innocent families who were Muslim by faith. During the month of Ramadan, I condemned their actions against humanity and urged them to take off their masks of associating with Islam and calling themselves Muslims. I'm sending my condolences to the victims there, and may your situation improve. So I had to draw a comparison between what happened in the event of Karbala and what's happening in the current situation. So even in the times of Karbala, there were 2 sides, Imam Hussein alayhi salam side and the Yazid side. The Yazid side was also calling themselves Muslim, and then Imam Hussein also was a Muslim. But obviously only one side was on the right path and the other one was just taking the name of Islam and pretending like they were also on the right path. So I told them that this has happened in history before, where 2 sides who claim that they're Muslim, but only one side is on the right path and the other one deviated. So we're seeing this history repeat itself. So it's nothing new for Muslims who've seen this before. So that was actually very enlightening for them. They found that they had never heard about the event of Karbala or the mission of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and when they could connect it with what's happening in the world today, they said, okay, I think that makes sense to us of why this event is so important to people on their side of the world and why somebody would place a picture on their profile. Because to them, this looked like, if you can see in the picture, it looks like Imam Hussein alayhi salam has swords on him, which to us is very normal, but for somebody from, let's say, American society, that would seem like a violent act. But when they understand the reasoning behind it, it was very clear to them why that was happening, and they could also understand that not everybody on the other side of the world, they also are suffering in the same way that Imam Hussein alayhi salam suffered, where he stood up against oppression. People on the other side of the world today also are being oppressed with groups that associate with Islam. So that actually ended up creating a better understanding, and I was in a position to be able to facilitate that kind of conversation, which I probably wouldn't have been able to do if I wasn't in the position I didn't have access to the FBI. But I was able to talk with them about many other events and explain different things. And they also talked about how hard it is for them to understand what's related to Islam and what's not related to Islam. So there's so much work that has to be done in this area. So I really encourage people in their circles to be able to reach out to people they're around and talk to them about our values, and especially event of Karbala, and explain in what's happening in the world today in current light of how you can relate past events to current situations. That would be very helpful. So thank you very much. And this is my contact. I'm happy to connect further. And I also just want to give a shout out to my family in the United States who are watching, and my grandmother, Sayyida Mohsina Begum. She's tuning in from India. She just did Hajj a couple of years ago. She's in her late 80s. I'm really happy that she was able to watch me. So thank you so much.
Jazakallah. Thank you so much, Sister Farheen. I'm honestly in awe that we have a spacecraft engineer among us. I always refer to the Shia community as a minority within a minority. As Muslims, we are already a minority, and of course, the Shia community is a minority within that. That is why your topic of integrating with different faiths are so important. I love the examples that you gave of Hadith, and surely our Ahl Bayt love and respect it all. Thank you for all the work that you're doing. With that, I actually want to continue on to our question and answer session. We will be answering questions that you have sent in for our panelists. And with that, our first question that was sent in is for Zakira Shairoz Jafar Zahala. The question says, with the pandemic and lockdown, it's taken its toll on everyone, but perhaps especially the kids who seem to be more frustrated, but are also more adaptable than others. So they have to express themselves in ways. Is there any way to know red flags when it's just a normal tantrum or when it may be more of an issue or a cry for help? How can we support them in the best way, both Islamically and from a medical point of view?
Thank you. That's a great question. Before I start, I think, Farheen, your screen, we're still seeing it. It's still on share screen. So we have to press stop sharing, right? Sister Shireen, we see that.
Yes, please. Sister Farheen, if you could just stop sharing your screen, that would be really helpful. It's on the top of, thank you so much.
Perfect. Great. Thank you so much. So this is a very good question about how do we know if someone's really falling apart from inside, and how do we know when to intervene and when to back off, when not to be intrusive? Correct? Is that what I'm getting from this question?
Absolutely. That's what I read.
Right. So definitely it's important to see if something is out of the norm. So if there's changes in appetite, it's hard right now because we're all eating too much, or, everyone's acting out of the norm. But if that person's having trouble concentrating, difficulty remembering things that are not their usual selves, and now it's becoming a salient part that you're saying they're sleeping way too much or way too little. They're also definitely, when they talk about death or suicide or God forbid, are actually doing self-harm, in terms of cutting or anything like that. Also, aches, pains, cramps that don't go away even after a treatment means that there's something psychosomatic going on. And some people end up, when they're more aggressive and irritable and even abusive, throwing things. These are all signs that this person is crying out for help. Often we react angrily with them, and then it just exacerbates the problem. When a family, especially we're talking about family because we're right now all in lockdown in various ways. So to have a family that's forgiving, that can act like everything's okay the next day, and to give that person time to reflect and sort of process what they've done. But that feeling, especially if they're talking it out loud, of being guilty, of being hopeless, of being worthless, are red flags indeed. And so having said all those red flags, then it's so important not to criticize, to nag, or to ignore. Like they're going to get over it. Oh, ignore them. Or calling them attention seekers. That hurts so much. Or to be told, oh, just get over it, People want to be heard and loved and understood. So hard for us who are watching this happening that we don't react angrily or negatively. And that's why it is important for people who are in the periphery to actually get help for themselves so that you're doing it correctly. Taking all threats of suicide very seriously. I mean, don't wait for that. Having heard it once means it's bad, because that person is trying to say it as a joke, but it's not, especially when you see it on social media. But I often reached out to people who have said kind of stuff like that and alerted friends in their friend circle. I've literally done that. Keep an eye out for people. People are sad right now, and we are a village. We're all watching each other, global village. So if these people are beside us, then we have to remove anything that are self-harming kind of things, sharp objects, firearms, dangerous medications. Really take this seriously. And also helping that loved one to eat, sleep, dress, hygiene. These are the things, the signs. When hygiene goes, it is a sign this is getting bad. Of course, right now, everyone has a lot of long hair and beards and walking around really looking like that. But they should not be liking that. They should know that there's something. There is a difference. You can see the dead look in the eyes. And it's very important to realize we can't just think our way out of some of these things. You can't talk your way out. And we're talking about now, because this question's about the person who's really looking worrisome. But a family that's in tune with each other, before it gets that far, it is important to start working on getting help. Talk to each other in the family quietly and say, is it just me or am I noticing something here? And look, it doesn't have to go all the way to calling 911 or going right to a psychiatric facility. No, if it's early enough, then it starts with the family doctor. Taking that person to the family doctor and saying, just figure out maybe this is a physical illness, and talk. They might be able to talk to the doctor in a more deeper way, and then interventions can help in some families, but they have to be done very, very carefully. That it's just maybe one or two people at a time, not feeling ganged up on, and also not feeling so judged when people. Because remember, there's a stigma when you're telling someone go get help. You're really making them feel like there's something so wrong with them. We have to destigmatize this whole thing about reaching out for help. And right now, it's become even more easier to get help on the internet. There's free help as well. Of course, there are people in the community who are willing to talk and to give that talking cure, Islamic cure as well. I mean, these things cannot only be talked out or du'a'd out. It's so important that we don't just say, oh, let's just pray and it's all going to go away. Let's be pragmatic about this and realize that we need help. And there's no shame in getting help. And if it's done correctly, really, it can help greatly. And there are people who have come out of this. But you do need the service of a professional interventionist who can help a family, especially if there's some kind of substance abuse, God forbid, then you really need that intervention to happen with the whole family saying, listen, we all agree. But keeping an open line of communication with that depressed person is paramount. Reaching out to them, even though they keep their door closed, visiting them often, talking to them, so that they don't feel like they're under surveillance, but it just feels like you're friendly reaching out. Let's watch something I really need help figuring out what to buy. You've got to come with me. No, I need you rather than you need me. And also, getting them whatever they like, their favorite foods, whatever gets that high. It's so important. There's some things to not do, things to not say. All this stuff is on the internet. Please look it up. If you do find that someone in your radius is not looking like their usual self, it's out of their character, and if they've said it out loud, then it definitely is a cry for help. And just quickly, it's so much to say, but Dua 54 of Sayfa Sajadiya for removal of worries. They're Quranic ayah definitely to look at as well, that are actually not just to recite, but to understand and to read the tafsir of, to really help that person on a spiritual level as well.
Thank you so much, sister. And please stay tuned. We do have more questions for you. Next, we have Sister Fahima. We have a question for you. It came in. It says, while we try to raise our children within our own faith, how or what is the best way to go about balancing it in a secular society? How can we place an emphasis on our religion without downplaying others in order to prepare them to strive towards social justice or activism for all?
That is a really good question. It's quite wide. I might need another show for just that alone, but I'll try my best. To be honest, there's no compulsion in religion. Remember that we cannot enforce and force people to think and feel as we are, just as much as, they cannot do that to us. If we're talking about children, again, if you are teaching them to be confident about their identity, their values, their ways of being, to be an individual, because a lot of the times we feel that we want to connect. It's a natural need to want these connections, to feel that we belong. And if we're spending more times out of the house and with people that are not of our faith and value, then we do need to find, some sort of way of maneuvering in a sort of like a healthy way where we're not infringing on our beliefs. The thing is, we don't realize that we need to connect with people with sort of like, a high sense of knowing yourself first, so that you are the influencer and they're not going to be influenced on you unless it only complements what you already know and believe. We always going again out of fear that we're not strong enough and we are the vulnerable ones and we have to be the apologetic ones and we have to be the ones that, is sort of downplaying what we feel and believe. So that's why sometimes we can be a bit overpowered instead of being empowered ourselves, and being, empowered not just as women, but also as children and also as Muslim. We're not listening and we're not hearing about us being positive and being proud to actually wear the hijab, to say our names out loud, to be who we need to be wherever we are, regardless of even in a secular Western society. There has to be now where we have to be taught in our world, in our households, that what we are doing and being is not isolated. Muslims have been around for many years and generations. And yes, there's always been issues and tests and things like that. But we need to now come out and say, look, we have been in the forefront for, majority of, our history. And we need to educate ourselves on that and be proud of the fact that we were in the arts and, in sort of like cultures and sort of like, in maths, and lots of things has happened. Maybe we've fallen back a little bit, but like we've just had on this panel, an amazing array of speakers from, backgrounds and professions that, are not norm. So we need to now feel that when we are maneuvering in any sort of society, professional, school, educational, whatever it is, we need to walk in there where we are the ones to shake that room when we walk in, so that we are the ones that people want to be in our company, not because we're telling them, oh, Islam is the best way. We have to act, behave, and be inviting ourselves, that people want to be in our spaces. Okay, just like how I've mentioned this example before, and I will say it again in another analogy, is that when you want someone to take on your own household, you can't go into their house and tell them, you got to change that sofa, that wallpaper, that whatever. You invite them to your house and you show them how amazing it is. And they will ask you, where did you get that from? And they want to do the same thing. So that's the attitude we need to have, so that we can not feel like, oh, we're walking on eggshells because, we're in a place where we're the only person. I live in a minority Muslim, in the UK sort of like area. And it was predominantly, in a different class where it's majority, British, Caucasian, white. And I stand out in the most positive way. I will invite, the parents in my house to associate with me, to know who I am, to know that I am proud, so that they have their differences, I have mine, but we can communicate. I will go into the workplace. I will be in a professional place where it may be all male or white, whatever it may be, faith of another sort of than mine, does not matter, as long as I know I am strong and firm in my foundation and belief. So that's what we need to instill from our children from a young age, so that they're not feeling like as if they're the ones that are isolated. You can be there, like even in our Ahlul Bayt and in our times for our Prophet, peace be upon him and his family, they can be there in small numbers. That does not matter. It's the quality of what you are inside. And if you build those blocks from a young age, then, whatever setting you put into, you go in there proudly, you go in there confidently, then you're the one that's going to inspire. You're the one that people are going to question, to want to be with, sit with, and want your company and want to know, where did you get that from? without having to feel that, oh, we're different and, we're in your house and we're going to do it in that way and we're going to be influenced in a bad way. And I understand a lot of parents even get really fearful that their children are mixing and mingling. I'm like, it depends how you're bringing them up and how you're raising them. Are you going to raise children to go into that waterfall that's going to get carried away with it, or actually going to be strong enough to take that water and bring it back? No matter how strong that tide is, no matter how strong that wave is, that's what we need to instill first in ourselves and then to filter it to the rest.
Mashallah, thank you so much for that detailed response. Our next question is for Sister Farheen Rizvi. The question says, there are still certain fields or careers where doors are still ajar to any minority, so especially to women and Muslim. How or when do we know, or can we know, to really continue to run after our dreams, and when it just might be futile for a certain point, and know when to start looking for something else? Sister Farheen, I believe you're on mute. If you could just, thank you.
Thank you so much for the question. I was going to focus on the wording there where it says chasing after your dream. So making sure from the early stage what your intention is, why you're pursuing the dream in the first place. It should always be for God and Allah and Ahlul Bayt. It should never be for any worldly reason. And then even if you reach the goal, even if you don't get to the end point, what you learn along the way will be very valuable to you. So just an example that when I remember when I was 4 years old, I was looking at a comet in the night sky, and I was only 4, and I remember this memory very distinctly where I was thinking that I was remembering God when I was looking at the comet, and I said to myself that, okay, I want to grow up and learn about space because I want to seek nearness to God from studying space. Even though I forgot that dream or my thoughts for many years, when I was part of the space program, I would think back on that moment and I thought about, okay, this is why I wanted to pursue, and this is why I want to pursue my goals. So making sure that your goals are always for the sake of God is probably, you would never feel like anything you do is futile in that case. And the other thing which was mentioned in the question was, we still have a lot of doors closed for minorities and women or Muslims. If you think about, I live in the United States, so I think about the Declaration of Independence of the United States. It says all men created equal. And then I'm also a Shia Muslim. And I think about the Quran and the Prophet Muhammad, the peace be upon him and his family. They also say all men are equal, and they give everybody equal opportunity. The first verse in the Quran that was revealed said, read in the name of God. And Allah also said, we created you from Adam and Eve. I don't see, if there's doors closed, then you can be the one to open the doors. You don't have to give in to any living person. You don't have to give up your dream for any person, because the country that you live in, or even God who to be valuable, pursue that. You shouldn't let anybody else stop you from doing so. There are many examples. Bibi Fatima alayhi salam, she was the first woman who stepped into politics at the time. For example, when she spoke out for Imam Ali alayhi salam's right, she went into Saqifa and she talked to the leaders of the Saqifa that what they were doing and why that was not okay. So she was stepped into politics. Women were not allowed at the time to step into politics. Prophet Muhammad gave a platform to women to step up and voice, because they used to bury female children alive, and he stood up against that. So if you stand up against an injustice that you're seeing happening, you should go and do it. You should never think any doors are closed for you because you're a minority or women. It's your job then to open the door, because God gave you that right.
MashaAllah, thank you so much for that great response. Now we will ask, we have a question for Sister Farzana from Texas. How do we give back control to children without really losing the control itself as a parent? Where do we draw the line? It's a great question.
Well, to bear in mind that if we give back too much control, the child loses structure, and structure gives them that sense of comfort. So we need to be very careful, again, like you said, how much control we give them. So this is where the negotiation will work, I think. So if you've taken back control, to suddenly give them control, that's again an overwhelm. And they can't handle that either. So that's where the negotiation tactic comes in. So you give them a little bit of control at a time. Like I said, I'm going to go and just do the lunch boxes. You just wear your shoes. And if that works, fine. Otherwise, I'll help you. And then you give them another task. But don't just kind of give them all the control back at once. It's very drip, drip, drip. Once they're able to manage the control at the pace that, what you don't want to do is rip the control back off them, because you're getting late for school, if that makes sense. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you so much for that. Our next question is for Zakra Shairoz. It seems, this question has come, it seems as if many are trying to put a strong front, especially when it comes to families, so that their family nucleus remains intact. How can I know, or what to look for, if someone may be falling apart inside? And how do I know when to intervene and when to back off and not to intrude?
So this is a lot like the other question we had. So this gives me more an opportunity to add some more things to it, because this is a deep topic indeed. And it's great to care. It's great to be concerned. Just don't leave people alone. All the regrets you see of people who didn't reach out, or who didn't see the signs. So it's better to err on the side of caution and really reach out and ask, and pick up those signs. And even if they're saying, I'm fine, everything's great, look at how good I look, keep your suspicions in your mind and keep reaching out to that person. This means that you're not reaching out necessarily as a therapist. We're not therapists for each other. We're supposed to be friends, just there to listen. And sometimes it helps to act as if it's your own issue, as if something that you're struggling with, and say, I'm really feeling low lately. I don't know if it's just me. And that sometimes can start that conversation going. And like I said, acting like you want help to go to the mall or to pick up something, or that you really want them to cook you something. Give them something to do. Studies on happiness, and there's a whole branch of studies on happiness. People find that they're happy when they're doing things for others, when they have a reason to live. So give someone a reason, become that reason, need help from them. Also, getting people involved in volunteering really, really brings a quality of life for people who feel hopeless, helpless, and frustrated with their own life. It's so much easier to fix other people's problems sometimes. So get people involved in becoming a mentor, whether it's a big brother or for a job, something that will make them become an expert. Because a lot of people who feel depressed are feeling a loss of control in their lives. Things are not the way they wanted. Therefore, put them where they do have control, a place where their expertise shines. And that will, inshallah, get them feeling better about themselves. And then the continuous encouragement to make them feel that, wow, without you, I couldn't have gotten through. I really needed you. You're amazing. How does the world go on without someone like you? You're gorgeous. You're wonderful. You're needed. Having these on the refrigerator door as well helps, notes here and there for people in the family that you think are fine and who don't need it. I think this all goes back to making each person feel loved. I mean, even Sister Farheen saying hello to her grandmother across to India. This is how you make people feel loved in your life and validated. And at the end of it all, human beings just want to be heard and loved and included. Even if they close the door, it's because they feel you don't need them. So get through that door, open that door. Don't let them close their emotional doors or their bedroom doors. Make them feel that you need them.
I love that. That was great. Thank you so much. So our next question is for Sister Fahima. It says, with so much negativity around us, how can I still ensure my child remains empathetic and not affected by certain things?
With so much negativity around us, I can always counter negativity. It just depends how you look at life. Is it the glass half full or half, empty? Even when things are negative, you can always put a positive spin on it if you know how. If you understand, sort of a way of thinking that when there is something that is negative, I mean, there's a really wide question. Say, for example, I'm just going to assume you're looking at the news and it's constantly negativity. But even with that, there's lessons to learn. If you understand that, like I said before, we look at failure as negative, but actually, if you look at failure as feedback, so it's the assumptions that we make in life. It's the meaning that we give to certain things. So you choose. You are a mean-making machine. We make things mean certain things in life. And we grow up with this kind of mindset of, certain things that are negative and the stories and the internal dialogues that we actually tell ourselves these stories. So it just depends. Like, there's 2 people now in this pandemic who is suffering an economic crisis. There is one with that same negative, sort of situation will say, well, I'm now really finished. I'm not going to ever be able to, work again or have my restaurant opened again. Or the other person with the same negative, circumstance will say, well, I just got to be a bit more innovative or maybe take on a different skill or this, that, and the other. So, your mindset, your meaning, your stories, your internal dialogue is extremely vital. Regardless of the negativity, you have the power and control as to what you feed your mind. And if you can do it well, then you can actually relay that to your children. And again, it all starts with you, that personal development. It's not about, just constantly being positive. You have to be realistic. Yes, it is. But if you understand that most of personal development gurus and specialists out there do say that a challenge is there for you to grow. It's there for you to push yourself to boundaries, and being uncomfortable is actually somewhere where you can find sort of like places where you've not thought of venturing before, but can open up different sort of sides to yourself. So it's about that. It's not about putting it to one side and saying, that's negative over there, and just not look at it as negative. Okay, it's negative, but what are you going to do about it? Are you going to stay in that negative sort of cycle, or are you going to push past it? That's what it's about. Because if we all just looked at things and saw things for truly what they are and just left it as it is, we will just be in a hamster wheel, or we will not move. Are you the kind of person that we have a natural sort of survival mode, which is fight, flight, or freeze? There are certain things that are needed for you to freeze and stay still, certain things for you to fright and, run away. But a lot of the times we need to fight. We need to push past it. We need to look through certain things. We need to have a different perspective and lens. And that's all from, you trying to create different meaning, different assumption, changing your paradigm in life. That's what it's about, your assumptions. We grow up with filters. We need to unpeel, and we need to start again and recreate and rebuild. There are many strategies and techniques, inshallah, if you want to look up and read about it. But I hopefully that could give you some sort of insight around negativity.
Thank you so much. Our next question is for Sister Fazana. This question is coming to you from the UK. It says, I really get confused about personal space. I'm just at odds. I just can't figure out when I should hug them or when I should back off, or even if I should let go of all control with my child's personal space, or when to intervene.
So that's a really interesting question, because going back to what I was saying about sensory needs and sensory deprivation, I've got one child that constantly wants to hug me. I've got another child that never wants to hug me. And even if I go after that child, they'll run the other way. And I've got one child that's one way in between, So clearly there's a different sensory need. Now, my parenting may have been different through the times, but at the moment, the parenting is the same with all of them, obviously, because it's in the now. But still, they're reacting in the same way when it comes to hugs and affection. So there's clearly a sensory need or a sensory deprivation within them that's creating that wanting to hug or not wanting to hug, as opposed to my parenting, if that makes sense. So I think what we need to look at is you need to understand if that child is enjoying the hugs, and if they're not enjoying the hugs, what is their way of communication and showing love and affection. They may have very different ways of expressing their affection to you. And that's something you need to be mindful of. How are they expressing their affection to you? So you can find out how to express your affection with them. And if you really want to hug them, then ask them, oh, that was really nice. Can I give you a hug? So they've got a bit of a warning as opposed to going straight into an, oh my God, I'm getting a hug. You know, if there's somebody that don't like to be, you know, put in kind of like a comfort, what we call comfort for others may not be comfortable. So particularly people with learning disabilities as well. There are some people with learning disabilities that actually find where you're kind of, getting into their personal space, they don't feel comfortable at all. So the other part of the question was about losing control altogether, was it? I can't remember that little bit of the question.
Yeah, it seems that way. That's what they were addressing as well.
So again, it's not about losing control. It's about having the conversation and asking them that, I'm going to give you a hug. Is that okay? But in terms of losing control, I think it's, if we're having the conversation, there should be no reason to lose control. And it goes back to the answer to the first question where you don't back off altogether and you don't give them overwhelming hugs altogether. There has to be a medium. And from that medium, you find which way you need to go. But in that medium, you will understand your child. So in that medium as well, you give them some control and you have some control. And then you work through it, similar to how I answered the first question. I hope that helps.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. Our next question is for Sister Fahima. This comes to you from California, United States. It says, my child is now being aggressive and I feel I'm running out of options. What should I do? I don't know where to turn.
Okay, I don't know your personal story, so I am going to generalize here. When you are talking to a professional, and I normally will address this on a one-to-one basis where I will assess, what was the previous patterns, what was exactly the child's behavior. Is this really out of order? And was there any sort of instances that has happened that could have triggered? What kind of relationship do you have? How do you define that relationship? How does your child define their relationship with themselves and to you? A lot of the times they might spurt out things that, I just don't have an understanding, or I don't, enjoy life, or I don't enjoy school, or whatever that is. So there's so much to consider. And I would advise that you do seek professional help. I do advise that you speak to the schools. I do advise that you speak to counselors. And also, if you are trying to address this in your house, do seek a sort of ways in which that you can open up conversation with that child. Like I said, it is not something I can actually give online. It's actually going to be quite detrimental for me to do something like this without actually assessing the issue. When someone's aggressive, it is something out of, obviously it's emotion. It could be emotion where it's built up, or it's something recent. It could be a trigger. It could be something where the child is trying to express and not knowing what to express. And because it's a child, it's very delicate. So I would definitely seek some professional help locally, or some, whether it's schools or whether it's a professional body, that you will actually get that sort of one-to-one. Because when you are listening to these kind of talks, you can take away things. But when you really want to work on people, which I do one-to-one privately, that is when you're in a session with somebody and they will talk to you privately and confidentially, and they will ask you certain things and they will assist you through it. So again, I think for something this quite serious, you do need to have some professional advice for that.
Thank you. That was great advice. Our next question is for Zakir Shairoz Jafar Dhala. This is actually a two-part question, if you can answer. The first part says, regarding the hadith on the flyer, is there a breaking for either the patience or the pain itself of the journey or the wait? And if you recall, that hadith that was mentioned on the flyer for this event was from Amir al-Mu'mineen, alayhi salam. It says, be sure that there is something waiting for you after much patience to astonish you to a degree that you forget the bitterness of the pain. So if you'd like to answer that question, then I'll ask the second one.
This hadith is actually there to give us a lot of reassurance. It's saying, be sure, just know this, that all this that you're going through, after all this patience, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you so much that you'll forget the bitterness of this pain that you're going through. So we don't even have to make a decision whether we need to keep waiting and wait till the end, or so the question is, is it the patience or the pain itself or the journey or the wait? It's everything. This hadith actually covers it all and is trying to remind us that there is light at the end of the tunnel, that there's gold, a pot of gold at the rainbow. But also throughout this journey, there are happy moments. There are little joys, and we should look for those, and we should appreciate the little successes we get. We often feel we have to keep going till we get the degree, but every examination that you do well in, every little test, every quiz, it is something to pat ourselves on the back for. A lot of the people who are depressed are the perfectionist types. They feel that they need to be all or they're nothing. And we need to remind each other and ourselves that we're pretty good, even when we're on a journey and we're halfway there, that we've covered a lot of ground. And even if we went back, we're still on the road. We can still keep going. In this pandemic, alhamdulillah, we're still alive. And God forbid, even if we're sick, we're still breathing. And even if we're just in bed, God forbid, our eyes can still move and we can pray. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is showing us it's not over till it's over. Keep going and keep pushing forward.
That's beautiful. And another part of the question that we had is, when can we know when our du'as actually help us and when it is time to seek outside attention and help with our children in terms of behavior or other such issues?
It's so important that, and I had mentioned this before, not to just think that, if I pray everything, that's how it's. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helps those who help themselves. And there is a story about Hazrat Musa alayhi salam. Whenever people were offering him remedies, he was saying, no, God will help me out. I don't need all this. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala replies to him that I sent you, that was me sending you help through medicine and help through human beings. So when you call out to me, recognize when help comes your way. So just doing dua and not seeking therapy, not taking medication is an incomplete way of doing it. You can't just only focus on medication as well. It needs to be coupled with calling out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it happen. And you need good people around you. It's a whole process. It's a holistic way. But when to know, I think it's always the case that you have to do both. And when you find that it is getting, we're drowning, that it's time to seek help. Depression is understandable when we're struggling things. And that's when people around us say, you are under duress. Of course you should be feeling this way. But if there's no known cause, if we are overreacting, then this is maybe going towards clinical depression. If we are having 6 months of low and 6 months of high, and it's happening a lot, then maybe this is leading towards bipolar, and we need to get properly diagnosed. And in terms of getting the proper du'as, there are so many out there. First of all, the Holy Quran itself tells us, Allah bidhikrillahi tatma'innul qulub. It is with the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you will find peace. So just reciting the Holy Quran in itself, looking at the words, surrounding ourselves with the recitation of the Holy Quran absolutely is supposed to, lighten the load and make us feel, but we don't, often we think that's too easy, that's too simplistic. No, it's not. The angels are praying for us. By the way, Hadith Kisa is supposed to be for depression. Did you know? Because the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, at the end of it, when he asks for the dua for the people who are remembering the story of the panjatan on the blanket, he says that, oh Allah, whoever tells the story, kullu hammin wa ghammin, all their sadness should leave them, that they should feel a lightening of the load, that when they get up, that their troubles and their sins have fallen off from them like leaves have fallen off a tree. So the malaika do surround us when we call out to God and we are reciting the Holy Quran. And there's a beautiful site, we have duas.org, that has an entire section for particular duas that you need for whatever. And sometimes they're just Quranic ayah that you can keep repeating or reciting on water. Try different things. I mean, the sixth Imam alayhi salam has said just 3 times daily reciting Al-Kafirun and Al-Ikhlas and Al-Falak and An-Nas, reciting the charcoal, right? These 4 are really amazing. And also asking for Bala to leave us. The 7th Imam has said that, if you have to recite 100 verses of the Holy Quran, at the end of it, recite 3 times, Allahumma fa'annil bala. Oh Allah, I'm asking for this misfortune to leave me. And then there are many, many other du'as that are available. If only we seek, we don't have to do them all. Just reciting, by the way, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, carrying it with us at all times. Just that. Remember, it can bring life to a dead person. The condition is belief. And there is a verse 129 of Surah Al-Bara that is Hasbi Allahu la ilaha illahu alayhi tawakkaltu wa huwa rabbul arshil azim. It's so beautiful when you're saying, Allah, I rely on you, tawakkul. I'm giving all my problems to you. It does make a person feel lighter, makes them feel that someone else is going to handle this. This too big for me. And that, as I mentioned, the dua 54 in Sayfa Sajadiyah, same concept where Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam is saying, oh Allah, something that has happened to me is heavier than I can handle. But then no, you wouldn't give somebody a load that they can't handle. And he quotes the ayah of the Quran. And then he says, but this is hard for me right now. But if you've given it to me, you can take it away, and you have helped others and you will be able to help me. So it is a reminder. It is therapy. If you read Sayfa Sajadiyah and read the words, Imam is sort of doing a lot of, reflecting and thinking and talking about what God, how is he trying to teach me? Oh, this is what this means to me. And this could mean this. And you can actually have that talking cure if you seek that, inshallah. But remember, it's not just one thing. We need to look for everything. If, God forbid, we had cancer, wouldn't we go for chemo? We would, because that's the only way we can get better. Therefore, even with something which is like extreme low mood or extreme aggression, anger management, coupled with sometimes some medication, that calms the person down. A very overactive mind needs some Ritalin to calm itself down so that person can focus. We're not saying the drug is it, that's it. We're saying a little bit to just get over this hump. It doesn't have to be forever. And even antidepressants, if we have to have that, if the doctor feels it, doesn't mean it's not a death sentence. It's a little bit to focus, to get over this deep, deep sadness. And then inshallah, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's dua, help, with the right help, with the people around, everything can be, God is great. We can get through this. And if we have to, God forbid, if it means to be taken away to a hospital so we can get better, there's no stigma in this. If we had a medical illness, we would do that, right? We would get checked in. Well, mental illness also requires sometimes that you are in a safe place with some medication, some talking cure, du'as, people loving you, and just some time to get better so that burnout can just, get a little bit better. It's not the end. We can get through this. So many people have, and so many amazing stories. Let yours be a success story. Don't be those people that everyone's saying, if only they had just seeked out help, we would have loved them more. Give people a chance to love you. Don't do it alone. You don't have to be alone.
SubhanAllah. Thank you. I'm such a believer of everything you just mentioned. Thank you so much for that. Our next question comes for Sister Fahima. This is from New Jersey in the United States. How do we best manage our own emotions as parents, as well as that of our kids? Honestly, I feel so angry and frustrated at them due to their outbursts and behavior and attitude that I want to retaliate from inside. But it's getting really hard and scarier as we are two walls going at it. How do we keep together and sane? Wow, loaded question there for you.
Yes, I guess they all are loaded questions, but that's why I do suggest that, these questions are serious and you do need to talk one-to-one. I will give you some ideas, obviously, but generally I question my clients deeply before I even answer, because there's so much to it, because we do speak in metaphors. And when we say that we're feeling in a particular way, or we think in a particular way, or we're doing certain things, when I reflect back to them and I ask them exactly how it is, and if they say I am so lost, and like, where are you standing right now? They're like, here. I'm like, are you lost? No, you're not. Okay, it's a feeling, it's an emotion. And yes, how to manage and control. Well, our religion, is a perfect sort of, again, we have all the answers there psychologically, in a sense, but I do believe, and I reiterate what Sister Zakira Shairoz has said, that we do need to live holistically. And with that holistically, meaning that we also need to have balance. And self-care is important, especially as a mother, especially as a wife, parent. We have so many responsibilities, but in order for us to fulfill that, we need to take care of ourselves. And I know you might think, well, I don't have the time and I cannot facilitate me because I have to see to my children. But if you have that mindset of thinking like that, then you will burn out earlier than you need to, unfortunately, if you don't take care. A lot of us think that we need to juggle. When I studied a bit of neuroscience, and we are now doing things so rapidly, and we're doing things so much so when we're not focusing, it's actually damaging our nervous system. It's damaging our brain in order to juggle. We need to focus on one thing at a time. So we need to have balance. We need to have self-care, because that's when we will react and respond better to whatever situation we're put in, especially when it comes to, you feeling that you don't have the control. And yes, we can't take away that emotion. We can feel sadness, we can feel unhappiness, we can feel overwhelmness, whatever it may be in a negative form, but it's not taking away that emotion, but it's knowing how to respond and manage after. And that few seconds of pause makes a huge difference. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is to do breathing exercises, to do meditation, to have a bit more insight on, mindfulness. Because when we are like giving 100% at home, when we are at home, we're giving 100% at school when we are at school. And that's to also say that when you are in a room, somebody mentioned before, where there's chaos and you think you can't manage, when you practice meditation, it's like you create a bubble for yourself, even in the chaos. And if you allow your children and yourself to meditate 5-10 minutes before bed, you will find peace, your children will find peace, and they will have better management and control and focus, even in the chaos. But it does start with you. So read up a little bit on mindfulness, do a bit of meditation. It will help you in your salah. It will help you even regulate your emotions in order for you to respond better, even in those very testing times, which we are obviously, as parents, we get upset because, we have the three ego states. We have the adult, the child, and the parent ego state. And I mentioned this before. So we need to obviously operate as an adult in the adult ego state. So if your child is moaning and angry and, throwing a tantrum, and if you're shouting back, you're not acting as an adult. You're the child ego state like them. Okay. And that's not going to help you or them. And that's why we need to regulate, and it takes practice. Okay. We can, again, someone else said we can give out the advice, but we can't take it. But for adults, there are definitely certain strategies and techniques. And I will question, my clients severely in order to know what their routine is, what their discipline is. You need to have discipline yourself. You need to have balance yourself. You need to be able to have, that kind of lifestyle yourself in looking in a particular way, be in a particular way, so that you can act and behave in a particular way, so that your children can do the same. We forget that, we're not doing the things that we are shouting at our kids to do themselves. So it's really important that we do practice these kind of techniques, and hopefully, inshallah, with that, I mean, there's so much more, but that's just what I can give you with the short space of time that we have.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Our next question is for Sister Farzana. What are the best ways, or are there any ways to help calm down a child and help him feel safe at all? What else can I do?
I think first and foremost, you need to check your state of mind as a parent when you're approaching that child. Are you feeling calm? Are you feeling overwhelmed? Are you tired? Very similar to what Sister Fahima was saying. Do you need a break before you're able to try and calm the child down? Because if you're not calm, the child picks up on the senses that you're not calm and you're irritable. There's like a deeper connection that the child has. They're very much able to read you as a person, but for some reason we struggle because of everything else that we are managing to sometimes stop and read the child. And I think once we've got in a good state, or we've showed the child that we're in a good state, then only we can work on trying to calm the child down. So something that I had explained to that I have talked about a few times during the pandemic, when people have asked how can we make things easier at home during the pandemic, in terms of getting me time and getting the children to also try and get their own time for themselves, which frees me up of time. And what I've said is try and make a little kind of quiet corner or a comfy space with lots of pillows, blankets, and maybe a little mattress or something for the child to sit on, but away from the normal places of a sofa and things like that. So it could be a little tent that the child could go in, or yourself. And when you need time out, you tell the child, I'm just going to go and have my time out in the quiet corner. And you go into that quiet corner or comfy corner and you take your time out, and then you come back out. You've told the child that's what you're doing. So the child realizes that when I need to calm down, I can go to the quiet corner. And it will take quite a few times before the child actually understands that, look, Mum's actually come out so refreshed when she's come out from the quiet corner, and they might even, if you've got older children, they might even say, Mum, should we make you a cup of tea and bring it over to you? I mean, that's when you know that they really know and pick up that you are feeling a lot calmer there. And you can do the same if your child gets a bit overwhelmed, tell them, you know what, why don't you try the quiet corner too? Mummy loves it there. And maybe make them a drink and let them sit down in that quiet, comfy corner with their blanket and whatever it is that helps soothe them to calm down. I mean, if that doesn't work, giving a child a hot bath or a hot shower, that can help them to calm down. Spending time with them. A lot of the time we find we're not actually spending time with our children one-to-one with emotional connection. It's more about doing things for the child, making sure they get to the next. Obviously, we don't have sports clubs and all that going on at the moment, but, there was a time not that long ago where we were rushing our child out to, the function at mosque or the sports club or wherever it is, somebody's house for a party, and that party and every Sunday was just full of parties. There's a sense of overwhelm that happens there as well. And that child is wanting some level of intimate connection, which doesn't always mean a hug. It could just mean having a simple conversation over a drink or a cake. Have that conversation, connect with them intimately, and explain to them we all have emotions, kind of have conversations with them. And I think sometimes that would be more meaningful to them than actually you doing things with them and, trying to take them places to make them happy. There's a lot of learning that can happen, like we've seen today in quite a few of the talks, in the home environment. And that starts with good communication and sharing, lots of sharing of emotions, how you feel. Say, if you're angry as a parent, I'm actually feeling upset, because that's when they learn that what upset is and what angry is and what these emotions are. And when they understand that Mum is angry today and what I need to do, they hopefully will play ball with you, inshallah. So I hope that helps.
Thank you so much for that detailed explanation, Sister Farzana. Our last question is from the UK for Sister Fahima. It states, this person would like you to go over a little bit more how you, about the prosecutor and the victim that you were discussing in your speech. If you could elaborate that a little bit more.
Yes, it's basically a form of psychological communication where it's called the drama triangle. You can look it up, but I mean, I don't know because I obviously got this from my training in my certification for relationship and couples coaching. A lot of people are not aware of coaching and they don't consider it as professional, but it is a training that I have undertaken, and there are psychological techniques and strategies and methods in there. And this is one of them. So basically in that, when I said that, you know, in the corners of the triangle, you've got the persecutor, the rescuer, and the victim, we normally take on one of those roles. And when you're aware of it, then you can actually adjust, because we don't want to be either the rescuer all the time, especially when you think about friendship groups. There's always one person always complaining and moaning, and the other person's always kind of like, you know, kind of rescuing them by saying that, you know, I understand you, and enabling them in a way. So it's not just, you know, when we say communication, I go into depth when I've studied clean language. I've studied with regards to the psychological communication skills that we have within us. So you need to talk to a professional coach, and I put you in these situations and I question you. There's also the other technique, which is the perceptional positioning. So you are sitting in a chair with three sort of like chairs, just you and the coach. And you take on the role of yourself. You take on the role again, and you sit yourself in another chair where you take on the role of the person that you have grievance with. Or then you sit in the other chair where you become the coach, and the coach is there as a facilitator to question you, so that when you put yourself in different situations, that's why these techniques are so powerful when you're sitting with a professional and they have trained and they've studied and they've got these techniques behind them, so that you can actually come out of that session feeling like, I understand what it means to be empathetic, because I've sat in someone else's place and you've been there with a coach to help you. I've learned this technique about the triangle, the drama triangle, so that I know, am I always playing the victim? Am I always the persecutor, the one that's always, you know, causing the problem? Or am I always the friend that's the rescuer, that's always enabling instead of helping? So these are the kind of things, when you have got relationships that are troublesome, you identify what place you're playing, what role you are, and then you also make adjustments. That's why I do not give these kind of generalized answers, because I work in a mindset where I am doing things which is for you only, and that can only be done in a session. But I am sharing these techniques where hopefully you can look up. If not, you know, you can contact me. I do have a website, and hopefully, inshallah, you know, www.coachfm.com, where I do give these kinds of sessions and I go through these techniques in order to help you with them. So it's not like they can't be answered. But you know what? People nowadays, they need to invest in themselves. If you don't invest in yourself, then you're not going to grow. And whether it is, you know, seeing a professional, learning different techniques, reading about certain things, being in different spaces with different people, that's what's going to allow you to get those insights so that you can use it in your household. Because these are real powerful things that you can actually learn. And when you understand it, use it, it can be something that if your child comes home saying that they've had a problem with another pupil, you can put them in that perceptional position and say, you know, okay, this is you. This was your friend. This is what happened. Now you sit in that chair and be your friend. Tell me from their perspective, how is it that they've seen it? So I, you know, not just use these techniques just for myself. I use it so that I can teach others that they can use it for their own family and different positions where they can actually learn these techniques and use it for themselves as well, whether it's in a work situation, school or college. And it's really, really powerful. Inshallah, that helps. And like I said, if you do want to contact me, my details are there on my website.
Jazakallah. Thank you so much for that, Fahima. I'm so amazed by your knowledge, mashallah. That actually concludes our question and answer session. I would like to thank our esteemed speakers. I have been in awe of each and every one of you. Your expertise, your knowledge, and your work is truly a gift for our community. We are so lucky to have you and have your help during these challenging times. I pray that Allah continue to help you in your achievement and all of your work goals. If you enjoyed today's program, remember part 4 of our series will be held on Saturday, April 10th. Please follow our Facebook page at Ahl Bayt Media for further information, and we can be contacted at webinars@standfordignity.com. Thank you all for joining us. We have attendees from all over the world. I pray that Allah keep you all in His protection. May Allah and Ahl Bayt continue to guide us. This is Shireen Naqvi concluding our program. Khuda Hafiz.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Qul a'udhu Allahumma kulli waliyaka al-hujjat ibn al-Hasan salawatuka alayhi wa ala aba'ib fi hadhihi al-sa'a wa fi kulli sa'a وليل وحافظ وقائد وناصر حتى دليل وعين حتى تسكنه أنت كسوءا وتمطره فيها طويلا اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد.